Recording. Okay, this meeting is called to order, and this is the March work session for the City of Clarkston's council meetings. I am Mayor Beverly H. Burks, and we're calling this meeting to order. We'll start off with the roll call. Vice Mayor Yasu.
Present.
Councilman Carroll.
Present.
Councilwoman Johnson.
Present.
Councilwoman Hopkins.
Present.
Councilwoman Bell. Councilwoman Hood.
Present, and I'd like to note that Councilmember Carroll only responded for himself, and there appears to be an additional member attending.
Like, can you say present?
Gotta say you present too.
I have a representative from the younger generation. This is how
Younger Carol say present. All right, we got everybody accounted for. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to work session and resident comment policy. Any member of the public may address questions or comments to the city council referencing only agenda items after the mayor and council have had the opportunity to discuss the agenda item. Each attendee will be allowed 3 minutes for comments. That being said, we have no presentations or administrative business. The old business, which is to discussion of an ordinance to amend rules of procedures for mayor and council to add items to the city council meeting agenda. And who is that wonderful person? That's Vice Mayor Yasu.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right.
We had a thorough discussion on our I believe it was in our December council meeting, and it was tabled for further discussion, considering that we have incoming council members. So we wanted to make sure we give them a chance to have their thought on this. And but I just want to go back and recapture a few of the points. And I just want to say, currently the process requires to put anything on the agenda. The process right now requires one city council member makes an initiates anything that he wants to add on the agenda, and then one more council member will second them, and automatically that agenda item will be placed on the docket. And the same, however, the mayor requires to have 2 people to second him to put anything on the agenda. So so right now, one council member requires 1 person to put anything on the agenda, and the mayor requires two more as a council member to second him to put anything on the agenda. And the third sources of agenda are our city staff. And normally our city staff, they have to run our city. They have to, have our day-to-day activities. Business has to run, so they have to be able to put as much as they could or necessary. And that way, that's how basically agendas are being set right now. So this is the current process. And as you recall, sometimes, very often, our meetings would go past midnight. Whenever sometimes we would have over 10 agenda items. That's a routine thing. And that means we're losing interest from our residents. The more we go, the more longer our city council meeting becomes. And the staff have to stay for longer hours. And a lot of times things are tabled. So, in the last month or so, I've had more conversation with my colleagues, and I am willing to think of compromising and getting the middle ground. So instead of requiring 3 people or 2 more people to second for every agenda item, I am actually now proposing or considering to have the current system in place with a cap on it. So we would cap, that's what I'm really thinking. Instead of requiring for all the agenda items to require 2 people to second you, I am willing to consider to have the same system right now, and that will be only for 1 agenda item. So basically cap, 1 council member can put 1 agenda item per work session or per council meeting.
Answer.
And he will need only one person to second him, just like the way it is right now. And would also amend the mayor's the same way. It should be the same. It should not be unfairly. The mayor should not be required to have two people either way. But what I'm thinking is right now, we kind of liberalize and put a cap on it instead. We put a cap, one council member can put one agenda item with one person seconding him. But if any other council member, or if any other one council member want to put more than one, then he have to find more than one person to second him. And that way, that will be that will make it more equal, just like the mayor it is right now. So that way, we could have also the same status, like this. The mayor is required right now to have two people. So that's what really I'm thinking about compromising. And this would, I believe, would reduce the number of agenda items that can be put, and it will make it manageable. And I honestly know how hard it is to research agenda items, to prepare for agenda items. So we really can manage to put pretty much one agenda item per month. And we've had times when some council members don't put any agenda item for several months. So it's not really, this is not going to limit anybody. I believe like having one agenda item, capping it to one per month would be able to give enough time for every city council member and divert the other agenda items to committees. Because right now we all have committees, and we could study as many as we want on the committee level. That does not really have any cap. That's the discretion of the chair. So I really feel like that would be a way of reducing and making the agenda items manageable. And this will also promote collaborative atmosphere between council members, because if somebody want to put more than, let's say, 2 or 3 or 4, then he will be able to talk to another council member and share that with him. And that way he can also get more support, and he can work with multiple council members. So instead of just working with one council member to put anything on the agenda. And we also believe this will ensure productivity in terms of our meeting, and it will make our consensus ideas move smoothly and fastly. But this is what I'm really proposing right now. So if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer as well. Councilmember Johnson, do you want to add anything?
You pretty much summed it up, Vice Mayor. I agree with the concept based on the fact that it would keep our community's attention a little better. Right now, we get a lot of complaints from residents that have to jump off of our calls because of volume. We cannot control what our city manager and staff puts on the agenda, but we can monitor and kind of control what we put on the agenda so we can be transparent and have full cooperation from the community if they want to join our meetings. So I like what you're proposing. I think it's a great idea.
Well, thank you to council members for your update in terms of this procedure. Council, did you like to add anything at this time? Yes, Councilman Carroll, and then Councilwoman Bill.
So I do think that it's a problem that sometimes our meetings go towards midnight, although they haven't been doing that recently. But I mean, one thing I think we could do is, if we want to limit the time, we can limit the discussion not on any one item for a certain period of time. We could also consider limiting the non-binding resolutions to be perhaps just one a month. And then, because I know a lot of time has been on those as well. So I think that there are a lot of ways that we can kind of limit the meeting time without having to limit the ability of the council members to introduce things to be voted on, because I think that has been tradition in Clarkston for a long time, the 2 council members are enough to do a second. That's also the Robert's Rules of Order, generally, that something has to have a second in order to be introduced to the agenda. So I think it's better to stick with the 2 And, maybe we could say a max of like each council member gets a max of 3 items a month or something like that. But even that, I think it would be better if we would just say, hey, if we want to limit the time, we could limit the time that each item can be discussed, or we can limit the amount of resolutions that can be done that are non-binding, rather than limit the council member's ability to introduce items. Because sometimes there are 2 things that are, kind of urgent that need to be done. So I would hesitate to limit it too much. But I'm curious to see what the other council members want to say. I see that Councilmember Hood and Councilmember Bell both have their hands up.
Yeah, so Councilwoman Bell.
Can I respond to that first?
Okay.
I just want to explain. So the rationale I said, one is, so we have 6 plus the mayor, 7 people in the council. So if each of us put 1 agenda item, that's 7 agenda items. We always going to have at least 3 to 4, 5 agenda items that placed by the city. So that is easily going to top off 10 agenda items per month. And that's my rationale. Because if we say 3 agenda items, that's 18 agenda items just from the council only. And that would be 21 agenda items if the mayor wants to put 3 agenda items. So that's way too many agenda items to just cap it on 3. I would rather just leave it the way it is if it's going to be 3 agenda items, because it doesn't make any difference. So, and there is, if something is really important, I don't think it would be hard to find another person to second you. And that's why I'm leaving it possible, also leave it open. So if instead of just capping it, plus also allow council members to put in the agenda as long as they get more than 1 person to second them. So that way, there is still a room to put things on the agenda. And out of 7 people, I don't think it would be hard to find 2 more people to agree with you. So I think that's how I see it. But 3 would be way too many. That's why I really thought just cap it to 1. Plus, if somebody have very great ideas, they can still put it as long as they can find 1 more person to second them.
Councilwoman Bell.
Thank you. 2-part question. 1, what's your ultimate goal? Is the ultimate goal to reduce the timing of the meeting, to have less items, or is it to ensure collaboration amongst all of the colleagues for when you put agenda items on there? Don't respond just yet, Councilmember Awet. And then 2, Stephen, do we need to have this as a legislative item for the council, or can this be like an administrative policy that we put forth for how we're going to, because this is procedural, correct?
Good evening. It's certainly procedural in terms of the council running its business. And I think it would be highly recommended to put it in an ordinance. I mean, effectively, right now, there was a resolution that was passed back in 2016 that set up, the status quo that you need a 1 member and a second, or if it's the mayor proposing 2 council members to endorse the item to get it on the agenda. So we have a resolution now. I feel like it would take some kind of action by the council to change that, because the city manager can't just go against a resolution when setting up the agenda. I would the draft that I prepared and circulated when this was brought up last year is for an ordinance. And that's what I recommend, because it's the easiest place or way to document what the rules are. And it's where residents and other people that are interested in doing business with the city, including perhaps, we hear from a lot of people that want to request something from the city, whether it's money for a program or whatever they might want to do. I think the ordinance in the code book is where they would look to see, what do I need in order to get my item before the council? And the other thing I'd like to mention is that there was more to all the focus has been on what is required in order for an item to be placed on the agenda. But if you look at the draft ordinance, there is some other stuff in there that the city manager and I felt was important to basically create a common expectation about the timing, the publication, and other things about the agenda, that I think the public would appreciate that also.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. I think I just want to respond to the first question, which was the goal of this. And I think I stated it when I introduced the agenda item. The first goal is not to reduce the number just for the sake of reducing the numbers. The goal is to reduce the amount of time we spend having this meeting. And if we have too many agenda items, obviously it will lead to the meeting taking longer. And if we have lesser agenda items, that means there's going to be lesser time. So the goal is to reduce the time so that we can keep the interests of our residents intact. And the second goal is, of course, to promote collaboration, because if you have a great idea out of 7 people, I think it will not be difficult to find 2 more people to agree with you. So that way, we also work with multiple people. So if somebody can work with you on one agenda item, you can also find to work with another person. So I mean, I never had honestly a problem finding somebody to second me, and I always get with I always get people to second me from all the other council members, and I have done that to all other council members as well. If I feel something is worthy discussion, I would second it. And I've done it in the last 6 years that I've been in the council. So I think the goal is to promote collaboration, obviously. Plus, the biggest one is to reduce the time we are consuming discussing these agenda items. And if we're gonna table them, why don't we just put one agenda item per month at a time? And that way we can have enough time to prepare, and plus also this ordinance would codify the process. And like Mr. Quinn said, it would also amend or add or clarify the publication and the timing of our agenda items.
Councilwoman Hood.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of comments. To begin with, I would like to see us approach the efficiency of our meeting in the way the meeting is run and how we do our discussions, along with continuing to use the consent agenda, which I think has been very helpful in getting our meetings to the meat of the issue, so, and have time to discuss that. I'm concerned about anything that would limit an elected official's ability to bring forward items for the council to review. So my other comment is that I would like to see this issue discussed, if possible, at our retreat, so that we can all talk about the best way we individually and collectively can be efficient in the meeting. And if that means adopting some general rules, so be it. But, further, if I did support this item, I have a number of questions about how the ordinance is written. And there are a number of things in there that I question. I don't want to spend the time discussing those now because I'm not in support of this, but I will just finish my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hopkins, since everybody else has had a chance to speak, do you want to speak on this?
Yeah, I think I was clear last time, even though I was the one that seconded it going on the agenda the last time, that I can't support this because I was just actually kind of Googling collaboration versus collusion. I've had questions before where things seem to be all worked out, before I was on the council, where things seem to be all worked out by the council before it even came up for discussion. And I've had those situations since I've been on the council where I got on the phone with another council member and debated things kind of ad nauseum, and then realized when we got to the work session and we're discussing it in front of the public and the city, like you're just too tired to repeat the whole thing, but they haven't had the benefit of hearing all of the things that were considered. So I'm to the point now, I do not want to discuss a single thing with any member of this council involving council business unless it's in this forum in front of the entire city. So we won't have to repeat ourselves and we won't have to leave anybody out. So even if it's a terrible idea and a time wasting idea, I mean, come on, y'all, if we have to get another person to second, we're still wasting that time, whether we're on phone at work or wherever, we're going to spend that time. Let's just do it out in the open in front of everybody rather than having to sort of pitch your idea to individuals one-on-one and the other members of the public not having the benefit of hearing the debate. I would just rather have the debate here publicly. So that's my thoughts on it. Although I am for lifting, and I think that might have been made personality specific, but the restriction on the mayor that they have to get 2 people, but everybody else has to get 1. I would be for limiting that. And I do like some of the other things that were in the ordinance, such as adopting the agenda at the beginning of the meeting and officially making it that anything added to has to be done right in that segment before the agenda is adopted and then once it's adopted. So there's things in there I like, but requiring people to go offline to discuss and debate, I don't think it's productive at all. We're still going to be discussing and debating. Let's just do it publicly.
Okay, well, thank you. And Vice Mayor Yasu.
I just want to say, first of all, I'm not proposing anything to be debated outside the council meeting, but normally, unless there is a quorum, I think we definitely have to talk about agenda items, and that's really I don't really look at it as a collusion personally. As long as there is no quorum, I think that's how we put things on the agenda. If you want to put things on the agenda, you have to talk to somebody. I mean, unless somebody just assumes that this is a great idea, but how will he know what you're trying to do unless you talk to him on the phone or you tell it everything on the email? So I always did follow up through phones or text, and I do ask people, try to explain to them what I'm trying to do. That is nothing to do with collusion and all that. I really don't honestly understand what does that have to do with setting up the agenda items. To put things on the agenda, you have to talk to somebody, whether it is through email or on the phone. And I'm not saying anything about voting. At that time, we're not talking about voting for something. We're only talking about putting things on the agenda. So I honestly, respectfully disagree with that notion. But if you guys are okay with the way the meeting going to go until midnight, I'm okay. I mean, I don't mind staying until midnight. So okay. I'm just trying to see.
Let's do this, Vice Mayor Yasu. I'm gonna let Councilwoman Johnson talk, but I think so far, and thank you for holding this back for a moment in terms of allowing new council members to have an opportunity to work with the existing council members. But I'm gonna let Councilwoman Johnson speak, and then I see Councilwoman Hopkins has her hand raised. And I'm mute.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And during the time that Vice Mayor Iyasu tabled this item, I did do some research. This is not the first time this has ever came on an agenda. There are cities that have hours, designated hours, which means if you have 15 items on an agenda and you only get to 6, that's your next work session. So what we're trying to do to answer Councilwoman Bell's question, the reason I like this is because we lose our community on these calls. We can start with 30 people on the call, but by 10 o'clock, we only have 8. So if we're wanting the community to know exactly what we're discussing and what's going on and what our ideas are, I felt that having some type of limitation to what we can put on the agenda would show the community that we do value their time. And if there is something of importance, we know how to put that agenda item on the agenda without still cluttering the agenda and losing our community. So I did do the research. There's several ways to do this. I really like some of the things that Vice Mayor Iyasu did bring up. As far as limiting the mayor, I think the way that is structured is really good because the mayor gets to put her item on and 2 of us say, oh, okay, Madam Mayor, we like that. We'll do that. So I think that doesn't need to be bothered. But back to what Vice Mayor said about multiple items. I don't put items on the agenda every month. So if Councilwoman Hood has 2 items and I like them, I can take one of hers, still not crowding the agenda, and I'm still supporting her idea. So it really makes sense to look at some way of accommodating our community. I'm not even looking at it coercion, because when I discuss stuff with anyone on council, at the end of the day, regardless of what their persuasion is, my vote is my vote. My decision is my decision, and I respect everybody else's opinion. So I just thought it was a way to keep our community engaged. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Hopkins.
When we're talking about meetings going very long, I would sort of second what Councilwoman Hood said about the way we structure our discussion and debate. I just noticed what happened right now. This particular item, Councilman Iyasu sort of put his pitch out here. This is what it is. And then it went to Councilman Carroll and back to Councilman Iyasu, and then to YT Bell, and then back to Councilman Iyasu, and then to Susan Hood, and then back to Councilman Iyasu, then to me, and then back to Councilman Iyasu. And so we are repeating, it's basically gotten to being argumentative and not productive of time. And I'll be honest, me and Councilman Iyasu had this very conversation in the car at 6:30 as I was driving home from work. So those points could have been brought up in this meeting and were, and at a certain point, we need to just like one person speaks until everybody speaks, and then have a limit on the conversation. But I don't think too many items is the problem. I think it's maybe the way we're discussing it. I've also seen 20 items on the agenda and us get out by 9. So it's not the number of items, it's how we're discussing it. We maybe should set a time on it, or just say, you know, we've got so long, and then it either gets tabled, referred to committee, or voted on, and that's it.
Okay. And that sounds very good in terms of how we manage it. So I'm gonna wait, because Vice Mayor Iyasu, you have talked so much, I haven't had a chance to talk myself. So we're gonna make sure in terms of how we deal with this agenda item. I think what I'm hearing from the group is that there's still a little bit more work that needs to happen in terms of how we have some type of resolution. Not everyone is on board with us just having it as one agenda item, but also that we may need to change the structure in terms of each person speaks, and it's not a back and forth in terms of, you know, making your position heard. So your position is what you originally started off with, and the council members have an opportunity to follow up and have their opportunity to speak. So with that being said, and the discussion piece. Is this something that you would like for us to kind of thrash out in terms of having it at the retreat? Or do you want to have more discussion? Because I hear a lot of different options out there of what people want, but I also noticed on the resolution or the ordinance that Mr. Quinn had, is there some pieces that we need to do for our staff, and we need to make sure we take that into account as well, just to make sure in terms of if we say with the deadline that the staff gives us to put something on the agenda, then we need to stick to that and not stick to that. And so if it needs to change, then use that opportunity when we have to present the agenda. So council, do you want more discussion on this? Because it sounds like we got a lot to flush out with this. Or would you prefer that this be an agenda item on the retreat where we can kind of make sure in terms of those additional policies and procedures? Or do you just not want to do anything with this item at this time? Vice Mayor Yasu.
Yes, Madam Mayor, and normally if somebody puts things on the agenda, I'm basically the point of contact for that agenda item. So I have to be able to respond to questions. But if you want me to write them down, I'm okay with that too. But either way, it's still going to take me the same amount of time to respond to questions. So that's the reason I was responding to questions that were raised to me. It's not like I'm trying to be argumentative. If I did not put this agenda item, I would never do that. And I've run meetings before, and I know that every person has to speak before I speak. But the only reason I keep responding is because this is an agenda item that I placed, and I definitely have to be able to speak and respond to the questions and explain what I'm trying to do. So that's the only reason. I just want to make that clear. I mean, this is not trying to dominate the whole discussion. I would
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah,
that's okay, Vice Mayor. We understand. We understand.
And I apologize if it seemed like that. And I'm not trying to do that. So
that's fine. And you stated quite well. But at this point as a council, what do you want to do in terms of this item? Do you want additional discussion on it? Because again, I'm hearing different pieces to it. I'm hearing that some people want to, well, I guess the question is, do you want to have it where it's just council members putting one agenda item on there?
That's how I thought that would be a compromise, honestly.
That's so polite of you to make that compromise. So
I would rather not have that. I'd rather have it moved to the next retreat for discussion. But of course, Vice Mayor Asu, it's your agenda item. So if you want to push it to a vote, that's your call. I feel like the consensus is not in favor of it right now, but you may be able to persuade people in between now and then.
And if that's, I think I've heard that from
Vice Mayor Yasu. See, this is, let's stop. Let's stop.
Go ahead.
So we're going to make sure we're going to stop. Okay. So council, would you prefer to have this as something that we flush out a little more at the retreat in terms of overall policy? I see a thumb up there, thumb 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're done. Thank you. Public, do we have any comments from the public, Ms. Cowie?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have the Medfords in alphabetical order. It's Amy Medford and then Mr. Brian Medford.
Mrs. Medford.
Hi, I guess I'm glad my name begins with A.
It does.
I am really concerned about this item in part because what was written on sort of the one-page overview does not match at all what's written in the actual resolution. And that was the same mistake that was on the agenda the last time this came before council. I think in December, it was the same issue. So it's just concerning and confusing to those who want to read it to know what is actually going on. And when you're talking about things like changing the agenda process, that confusion can lead many to think that it is intentful or that it is being done to purposefully confuse people or muddy waters that don't necessarily need to be watered or muddied. This issue is something we don't need to change how we get things onto the agenda. The consent agenda has worked great. We've had lots of items and still gotten out early. The concern here for me is that you would silence voices that aren't popular at the moment, and that's wrong. Efficient government is not what the goal is. Good government is, and good government is seldom efficient because it takes into account many resident voices, and it takes into account many, lots of steps in research. And so I would really caution you against your goal of efficiency, because what you sacrifice for that is good representation, good government, and allowing residents to be heard. So changing some of the discussion process or limiting the discussion time or putting a time limit on the meeting is a possible alternative, so long as those agenda items are then bumped to the next meeting. Don't sacrifice voices and goals just for your efficiency.
All right, I've already spoken about this in person even, about this agenda item before. I want to give the mayor credit because she has wielded the consent agenda like a samurai warrior, and it has been awesome to witness. I am highly in favor of using the consent agenda to speed things up. I think it makes sense. I think it will solve some of these issues and questions of speeding up the meetings. I think you all know that I've attended my fair share of meetings, including ones that ended past midnight. And so, yes, being in bed before then would be great, but never, ever at the cost of hearing out good ideas or at the expense of silencing others. The way that we've been working has worked fine for years. I'll say it again. I was highly concerned about how quick this came about in December and how quickly it was pushed in to be discussed. It was very suspect about how this whole agenda item came about. And so to suddenly want to change the threshold of how many people it takes to get an agenda item on, well, the Cobb Board of Education did that not too long ago. They moved the goalpost so that their 3 Democratic people couldn't put agenda items on anymore. And so moving the goalpost to make it more difficult to add agenda items kind of makes me a little concerned right now. It may be in the interest of time, but that means what's happening is instead of the discussions happening, as Laura has said, in front of everybody, we're moving all those conversations to the back room where they were years ago. I know for a fact there are people sitting up there on the dais that are steamed knowing that there were conversations that happened with nobody knowing, and then the decision was made before the work session ever happened. This is painting a place for this to happen again, for those conversations to happen in the dark, away from the community, and it does not need to go back to that. We are better than that, and you are elected to do better than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cowee, did we have any other comments from the public?
Madam Mayor.
Okay, with that being said, this agenda item based on consent from the council will be something that we will move to the retreat for further discussion and clarification. Thank you all. Thank you, Vice Mayor Yasu, for bringing this up and even pointing out your compromise. So thank you. We'll move on to the next new business, which is A, discussion of a resolution to adopt the approved Clarkston Comprehensive Plan update. And that is City Manager, Ms. Cowee.
Evening, yes, in October 2021 was the mandated deadline for the comprehensive plan to be updated for the city of Clarkston and other jurisdictions. Public requested an extension to go through the comprehensive plan update a little bit more, and we extended that review process until September of 2021. Well, after an extensive review with the Department of Community Affairs and the Atlanta Regional Commission, we now have our updated, approved comprehensive plan update. With that, we can get the adoption ready for the Department of Community Affairs so we can receive our qualified local status updated, and we can move forward with our comprehensive plan update. Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cowee. Council, at this time, do you have any comments as it relates to the comprehensive plan? No comments. Okay. Oh, I see Councilwoman Hood.
There it is.
Yes, takes me a minute to get that button right. I have in the past, before I was on this body, expressed my concerns about this document. So I'm not going to go into that now. It doesn't need to be repeated. I would like to just note that the request for an extension was for a public presentation of the comprehensive plan. I don't recall that that was done. But the constructive comment that I will make is that I would like to see the date and the title of this document on every page, including all the appendices. That's one of the problems with the last 2040 is that you have to get well into the document before you can tell what year it was. And these documents look so much alike that I think it would really help going forward to have that on the document. That way, not just on the title page, but that way, if anybody copies a page of it and attaches it to something or whatever, will be readily obvious which of the 2040s it came from. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hood. And do we have any other council comments at this time? Here,
I just wanted to make a
yes.
Madam Mayor, in reference to the comprehensive plan update, we did have an extensive public hearing process. Ms. Hood was on our comprehensive plan committee during this process, as well as the comprehensive plan update is not an update to the actual rewrite of the document. I wanted to make sure that I clarified that. It is an update to the report of accomplishment, the actual work that has been done in reference to the comprehensive plan. And we check off either underway, in progress, or we have completed. That also assists us with future projects that we do submit to the Atlanta Regional Commission or to the Georgia Department of Transportation for funding assistance. So our main thoroughness of completing those report of accomplishment was our main goal during an updated process. Of course, there are parts of the document that we will update as a part of this, as Councilwoman Hood did say. There is mapping, and that could be pages. But again, our first process for updating the comprehensive plan was due with an actual consultant that actually completed the document. If we're moving forward and we want to have a more detailed update to the document, we surely can get the assistance of a consultant to make sure that every portion of the document is updated, as Councilwoman Hood did state. So I just wanted to make sure that, I gave that little bit of detail in reference to the document.
Great, thank you for that clarification and update. And Councilwoman Hood?
Yes, thank you for that, Ms. Kawhi. That does help clarify in my mind the extent of the changes. And so I look forward to the next update. Thank you for all the work you and staff, et cetera, did on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Cowie, do we have any comments from the public?
No comments, Madam Mayor.
Okay, with that being said, in terms of this resolution, how do we need to act on this, Ms. Cowie, for the council?
You will, yes, at our next meeting, we will officially adopt the comprehensive plan update. We will have the resolution and we will send that. Our next step is to send that resolution along with the official adoption, our meeting minutes, to the Department of Community Affairs.
Okay, so because of that, I won't necessarily put this as a consent agenda item because we need to make sure from documentations that we do have this whole discussion approval and everything. Okay. All right. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is B, and that's the discussion of a resolution for SPLOST 04 B and C pedestrian enhancement, Trailhead, and Rowland Street change order number 41. Ms. Cowie, City Manager.
Yes, this change order is to discuss, again, change order number 41 for SPLOST 04 B and C, pedestrian enhancements, Trailhead and Rowland Street project to repair an 8-inch water line and pavement improvement in the amount of $20,488. This change order will enhance the level of water service along the project termini with the water pressure for current and future residents enhanced. Madam Mayor, and Mr. Kaiser is also on the line too, if you have any additional questions related to this change order. Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry. Council, did you have any comments about this item?
I don't have any comments on this particular item, but I would like to get an update from Mr. Kaiser and where we stand with the Rowland Street project, what the timeline for completion is.
Yes, Councilman. So there have been just a few minor delays. I don't remember I don't have the contract in front of me. I think they had in the contract until April. I just don't have that in front of me right now to complete the project. I think we're still looking at the end of April to do the work, to finish the work. So they have made substantial completion of a lot of the tasks. I think they're actually on schedule, ahead of schedule to do some of the work, to finish the work. So this is what? This is March. I believe they're going to be finished by mid-April is where they are now. And I think they had until the end of April, the 1st of May, Councilman, to finish the project.
So, Mr. Kaiser, if you don't mind offline, just to kind of send a note to the council so we can have that update. That would be greatly appreciated.
Sure.
Council, do you have any other comments? Hearing none. Ms. Cowie, City Manager Cowie, do we have anyone signed up for this item?
No.
I heard, is that you, Mr. Kaiser?
Yes. If you don't mind, let me clarify something here. This is not a repair to an 8-inch water line. DeKalb County did the water line installation work. This change order is basically to repair the trench above the water line. It is to fill in on top of the water line, the concrete, and to do the paving work as well over the excavation. So this is not necessarily a repair to the water line, which is what DeKalb County did.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, no comments from the council on this. Ms. Hood. Councilwoman Hood. You're on mute.
You know, raise hand and unmute at the same time, more than I can handle sometimes. I would strongly recommend that the language of this item and the resolution be changed to accommodate the clarification that Mr. Kaiser just gave, because going forward historically, somebody may come back and think that we did that versus the county. And, you know, I just think having it reflected exactly what we're doing would be a good idea.
Thank you for that point. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. It sounds like we'll do an update for that piece. Once we have that update, we can just do these two items as regular agenda items and move forward. So no public comments, and we can proceed on with discussion C, which is discussion of a resolution for SPLOST 08 Market Street resurfacing and sidewalk project change order number 2. City Manager, Ms. Cowie.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this again, change order number 2 is to discuss work that needs to be addressed that was not included in the executed contract by Mayor and City Council for this project. Work includes grading to install a 12-inch plastic pipe, to install a yard inlet, driveway concrete, a concrete curb, gutter, the removal of trees, a concrete retaining wall that is in relation to the tree, a concrete header, curb, reset the granite curb, and adjust a catch basin. This cost is up to $64,000. Plus, it is much needed work. And again, Mr. Kaiser is here to give specific details. We actually wrote this project together, and I would like for him to really elaborate a little bit more on the tree and the retaining wall for this project. Mr. Kaiser.
Mr. Kaiser.
Okay, here I go. I hope everybody's ready for this. Okay, so this project included improvements to Market Street, as you all know, and Carroll Park Drive as well. So Carroll Park, the scope of work in the contract included taking out a little bit of asphalt that's out there now on that very poorly constructed road that was done 12, 13 years ago, before our times, and to put asphalt, new asphalt on the road. So the pavement condition has deteriorated rapidly to where now the water is penetrating into the curb lines, and one of the catch basins has collapsed or has settled quite a bit. The existing curb and gutter on that road was never to be replaced on the original contract. The curb and gutter in those areas where the pavement has settled because of water infiltration into the pavement subgrade has resulted in curb and gutter settling in a few areas. There are other sections of curb and gutter that, because of the poor construction practices by that contractor years ago, the curb and gutter is deteriorating. There are cracks. There are numerous deficiencies and deterioration of the existing curb and gutter. So Carroll Park Drive, this is the first discussion of the change order. So the question that I think I would pose to council for a decision on next week is obviously the collapsed catch basin and the curb and gutter that has settled need to be replaced. And that is in the change order. I also asked the contractor to replace curb and gutter because it is very unsightly with cracks all over the curb and gutter. And so I included that in the change order because that's not part of the contract. So if you leave the aesthetics alone and you're okay with the cracked curb and gutter, and you only repair where the curb and gutter has settled and the catch basin has settled, which you have to do before you pave the road, then you take that number of $64,000 that's quoted to us. You take about, let me see here, about $1,900 off that number. So that's part one. All right. Part two is most probably a 50-year-old pine tree. That pine tree that's sitting on top of a hill next to the road. The root system has been compromised because of an easeabout. Easeabout had to go there. We had no choice. So there's a little bit of tree roots that have been damaged. So the question is, do we build a retaining wall at a cost of about $8,700 to protect a tree that in all likelihood will die in a very short period of time, a couple years? Or do we take the tree down and not worry about the retaining wall? That's the second part of this. The third part of this is the change that's needed for the work along about 3 or 4 houses along Market Street. So when the sidewalk goes in, many of those homes sit below the elevation of the sidewalk. They sit below the elevation. So the water drains from one yard to the other yard to the other yard. Or in some cases, the water just will pond into people's front yards because the sidewalk is 4 to 6 inches above the roadway that was out there before. So the yard inlets and the pipe that you see in the proposal is to convey that water out of people's front yards. In most cases, that pipe and those inlets are on private property, off a right of way. But if we don't drain the water out of people's front yards, every time it rains, you're going to have problems with water ponding in people's front yards. So that is the other part of this quote. And that's all I have.
Thank you. So let me make sure I'm clear. We're talking about 3 parts. We're talking about Carroll Park, and we're talking about that tree, and we're talking about the piping along Market Street. Okay. Yes, Vice Mayor Yasu, and thank you, Mr. Kaiser.
I have a couple of questions. First, I will start with the Carroll Park. Are those are those like catch basin and whatever that we are fixing, are those in the public right of way, or are those private property?
Public right of way. Public right of way.
Okay, so that road, is it private or is it public?
Public.
Okay, good. All right, that answered my question. The second one is the tree. So have we consulted somebody who can actually make sure that who actually is 100% sure that this tree is not going to survive this damage?
Yes, the tree arborist we use all the time for the past 3 years.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, Councilwoman Hood. And unmute yourself. There we go.
All right. Yes, I'd like to start with the tree. Was there part of the budget initially to take that tree out? Because of placement of the ease about, et cetera.
No.
Okay, so we're not saving money by anything. All right. And the arborist has identified that it most likely won't survive because the roots have already been disturbed. All right. The condition of Carroll Park Drive, I know it was never done properly and there was no bond. And the pavement doesn't look good, et cetera. Catch basin is collapsed, as you say. Yet this went out. The project was advertised 5 months ago. So when was the last time that the street and the drainage infrastructure were evaluated before that contract went out?
It was about a month before it was advertised.
And there was no concern about it at that time?
No, there was cracking, Councilwoman Hood, there was cracking the pavement up against the catch basin. Let me tell you what accelerated it. So back in the summer, we had construction occurring from the individual lots on Carroll Park Drive. And during the construction of those lots, construction equipment running down the asphalt, down the curb line, I believe, in personal opinion only, I didn't see it, but I believe that accelerated the damage that occurred to the curb and gutter and the catch basin. Because I can tell you, when we scope out a project, we walk every bit of it. And if there's damage to something that should be repaired as part of a overall scope of work, we identify it all the time. It's just routine to do that.
Right. You're probably right about, a road that was not built properly to begin with, and then incurring the heavy trucks coming over it probably accelerated its deterioration.
And think about it, Councilwoman, think about it. There was no truck traffic on that road until those lots began to be under construction. It was just
Exactly.
cars only.
Exactly. And then the last item relative to the ponding and front yards, when the work was proposed for this, were the elevations shot on
Yeah.
the street versus the yards, and so the ponding issue did not come up when the elevations were shot?
Yeah, no. So we did not. So this was a project that had limited surveying because we felt as if we could build. We did design work. We did not shoot elevations in everybody's front yard. We felt as if we could have that water escape over people's driveways from the yards, over people's driveways into the street. And as it turned out, that wasn't the case. So even if he would have shot it, we would have put it in the scope, and the cost would have been the same.
Okay, all right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Bell.
I put my hand down because
Okay, no
I
problem.
had the same question as Councilmember Hood, but I will ask this question now that you called on me. Thank you. Larry, is this the most sustainable option? The 3 items that you proposed us around the repairs, as well as the reconstruction piping? And the only reason I ask that is because we have a lot of what you mentioned around the sidewalks and the flooding of people's yard, not even just here, but throughout the city. We often get calls and the water's kind of forceful, tears up things, gardens, all those things. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to be looking at this again due to the construction on that street in another, 5 months, another year. So I just want to make sure, and based off your recommendation, that I trust.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So that is the purpose of the yard inlets and the piping. It is to make sure that there is no water ponding in those yards along the street. And so the other part of this, so that I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but you need to understand a little bit of this. Some of the driveways are increased in height as well to match the top of the sidewalk. That was part of the scope. And so when you reconstruct driveways, you will also, in some instances, also keep water ponding in somebody's front yard. And so all of this work that we're doing with PVC pipe and the yard inlets will correct, I wouldn't say it correct, it will resolve every matter that's out there. I will tell you that if you look at those 4 yards, Kitty's property as an example. So Kitty has had a problem for years with drainage coming across her driveway. And she actually has a little spillway next to her driveway because water comes off her grandmother or mother's house next to her, and it drains from that yard into her yard across her driveway. And so I've known about it for years as well. And so she realizes a problem, but what we're doing is going to make it worse. So the piping work that we're doing, the yard inlet, will solve her previous problem, but also make sure that we don't add to her problem. As one example, there's another yard closer to Marketplace Drive, I think is the name of the street, Marketplace Street, that the yard has always sat low, even before the work was done. And they never complained to us about a problem, but you could see there's a problem. And so this is going to correct it because we're adding to the problem. So we are going to be sure that all the work that we do, everybody's problems are going to be resolved along that street, on that side of the street. I can't say much for the other side of the street, but on this side of the street where the sidewalk's going, we're going to make sure we correct all that, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment, Councilwoman Bell, and then Councilwoman Johnson, and then I see Hopkins, and then Carol.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Larry, you pretty much answered my question. My question was, actually having interacted with Kitty since we brought her up, her yard is like totally obvious. So I wanted to see, you're telling us that that was not proposed, at least those last 2 yards were not a part of the initial proposal?
No, because her problems were all because of private property, meaning there is no stormwater runoff coming off of the street onto her property. except for a little bit coming off the road. So if you look at her driveway, she's at the end, right before the creek. So the granite curb that was out there before was flush with the top of the pavement. There was no granite curb shown at all out there. So what happened was the water came off the street across the granite curb into her front yard at the very end. And so, but the other part of her problem was water coming off of her mom's house next door, also drain on her property. That was not caused by the city. So it was a combination of both, Councilwoman. So this is going to solve her problem.
Okay. Because when I saw it, it was running down the street, all the way down the street and puddling in her yard.
Yeah.
In her, and she was sweeping it in the rain. Okay.
Yes. Yep. I'm aware of it. I was out there. I saw it. So this is when you raise the curb up and you raise up her driveway. Remember, all that work at her driveway is not done yet. We have to make some modifications to the granite curb that's out there. There's a whole bunch of little things that we have to still do. We have to redo her driveway. Well, we have to reconstruct her driveway. We have the yard inlets. So at the end of the day, she's going to be very, very happy with the work. I can tell you that.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add a little bit to that, Madam Mayor, as well, there are going to be other properties that we need to revisit and future think. There are properties that those curb cuts are not cut, but there are lots that are proposed for homes that are on Market Street right now. So we're going to look at that as well to make sure that those future cuts do not have an adverse effect on what we're currently doing down the line as well.
So I'm gonna make sure I put a place mark on that comment you just made, because you know.
We have discussed that, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we bring that up for future development, to know that there are going to be additional cuts on Market Street in the sidewalks that are currently going on, as we speak.
Okay. And Councilwoman Hopkins. Mute, you're muted.
Okay. I had questions about the tree that has to come down. I guess my first question is, I see Ms. Quees laugh. She knew I was going to ask about the tree. Was the arborist, did he or she have the opportunity to review the plan prior to construction beginning?
No.
Okay, so this is just somebody that was called after the damage was done.
It's Alex. Yes, it's the same person we've used for a couple of years that you met.
Okay. I just want to point that out because per like our municipal code, that was why I'm always on about the city arborist, because they are supposed to review all plans ahead of the construction rather than waiting until after damage. And then we walked that Market Street together and pointed out and had said, no trees need to come down for the ease abouts, because we don't need an ease about. I mean, it might be more attractive and less loud than a speed table, but a speed table also slows down drivers and you don't have to expand the actual asphalt and trees. But how did the tree get damaged? Like, was it just an accident or?
No, the tree roots on that particular pine tree were well into the road. And so even with resetting the granite curb and putting in the sidewalk on that side, both those actions only would damage the roots of that tree. So the root trees are now exposed, and the wall would be put in so that when backfilling occurs, you would not damage any more roots that already been damaged out there now. So it wouldn't matter what would occur out there. The tree roots would be damaged anyway, because the sidewalk has to be put on that side of the road.
So that's something that probably just could have been put into the plan in the first place if there was no way to put the sidewalk in without taking that tree down.
Well, in reality, Councilwoman, you could, not knowing where those tree roots were exactly, you could see where some of those tree roots came out from the side of the slope of the embankment that's out there. You can see it now. But we wouldn't know for sure where those root systems were until we started excavating, right? I mean, that's construction, right? So
Well,
you start
I mean,
resetting curb and you put in
That's why
sidewalk.
as an arborist prior to construction, because they would, that would be their specialty. Not the one that just comes and takes down the tree, but the one that protects the trees before construction and can advise the best way to do it and protect the trees.
All
That's,
right, so let me add this, not to be contrary to your statement, but let me make this statement. The sidewalk was proposed on that side of the street.
Mhm.
Unless council decided to move that sidewalk to the other side of the street, which we chose not to do early on because of more impacts,
Mhm.
that sidewalk would have still be put in. And
Mhm.
so what we're doing is in that section, well, actually there's another section of road of sidewalk down the street, about 100 feet, where there's two very large hardwoods that are close to, I think it's Jameson or DeBale, I forget which street. We're putting in pervious sidewalk, rubber, so the water penetrates through the recycled tire sidewalk, and so we're protecting two very large trees down the road a few feet. At this location, this tree would never been able to protect it. There's no way of doing it. It would be impossible. So have an arborist could have identified it, but the arborist would have said, Larry, the tree is going to be impacted. And then I come back to council and say, well, do you want to move the tree on the other side of the sidewalk on the other side of the road? And council would have said, no, keep it on that side of the road because there's less impacts overall to all the trees along the entire road. So it wouldn't have mattered. We would have still impacted it.
And thank you, Mr. Kaiser, but I think to Councilwoman Hopkins' bigger concern, it's procedural wise. That may be part of the checklist when it comes to our projects that we have, particularly if it has trees along the way, that we include something where we have the arborist to sign off or to have reviewed it, because then that way, in terms of construction, we've thought about it in terms of being proactive versus reactive, if it can happen that way.
And we did that, Ms. Mayor. If you noticed in the curve where the other easebout is, I brought the arborist in very early in the process to protect those two very large 100-plus-year-old hardwoods in that curve. So I did bring the arborist on to protect those two trees, but I didn't think about that other tree because it was a pretty good distance off the edge of the curve, and I just didn't feel as if there's a need for him to look at that as well. So we did do that, Ms. Mayor, on those two very large trees.
Okay. So then maybe what we can do, sounds like it adds to our procedures so that you don't have to worry about thinking about one or two trees. We're going to worry about all the trees down the road, okay? So we'll make sure that when it comes to the checklist, that's one of the things that we can have in terms of a sign off from the arborist that they've reviewed to make sure any type of trees or any issues. Is that good with the council in terms of that piece?
That is what's in the municipal code, is that
Okay, so
arborist has the final sign off before even a building permit is issued. So and oversees the plans, because as you say, you were able to protect the other trees, putting a rubber thing. I've heard of other builders that had very big specimen trees close to where they wanted to build, actually built a driveway over the roots. And what he did, because the owners wanted it done and saved, and the city insisted on preserving their trees, had an iron bridge made that they could drive over the roots. Was, kind of laced, I guess, that you could drive on, but it allowed the water through and protected the tree. They could drive right over, build a driveway right over the root. I mean, you said pine, so honestly, I'm not that concerned, but I am more concerned. Warren Hadlock's moved away, so I can say that and get away with it, but I'm not that fond of pines. But just for a matter of procedure, I think, yeah, that's exactly that kind of thing. It didn't look like it was going to be hurt, but then when we did it and we killed it, I'm just glad it wasn't a specimen tree.
Hopkins, Councilman Carroll, and then Councilwoman Hood.
Yes, I was going to say, I don't know if I should even preclude myself from this, but for at least some of the repairs that are optional for the Carroll Park, Pam on the Carroll Park HOA, it's possible that we could just seek some contribution for the Carroll Park HOA for the parts that are just kind of aesthetic. I understand the city probably would do the pavement catch basin repairs because those are required, but just for like cracking and things like that, it seems like maybe the HOA can make a contribution to fixing that.
That's something to keep in mind. Thank you, Councilman Carroll. Councilwoman Hood.
Yes, I just want to follow up the discussion about the water runoff affecting private property and therefore the city paying to, because we're going to be increasing that. I want the public to realize that we are not solving problems for homeowners. We're not doing this on private property because they have a problem, because that's not the government's responsibility. We are doing this, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are doing this because our project is going to make their situation worse. And that's why we are spending public money for these corrections.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification and point. Council, any other comments? Okay. And Ms. Cowie, do we have any comments from the public? No? No, okay. And so the only other piece is, and you know how I am about these, the driveways, the curb cuts. So for the, what is it, the four, it should be 4 lots. Are we, where we've built the sidewalk, we're going to have to go back and take that out, or what's going to be the plan?
Since, Madam Mayor, we haven't had the discussion with the developers as of now, the homeowners. We haven't gone through the land disturbance process with the 3 lots. There is an additional lot that is on market. It's behind the Bell house. That curb has been cut, and we have been in conversations because an LDP, the land disturbance permitting process, has been completed, and they are ready for construction. So we know exactly where that curb cut was going to be located, so we can make sure that the sidewalk was in compliance with their curb cut. Now, the other 3 lots that are on market on the corner of College and Market Street, and the one that's actually on market, I think it's next to Ms. Murray's property. Those curb cuts at this time, we don't know. Even if that one is next to Ms. Murray, will actually be developed. If you have ridden by it, it is low. It's extremely low than the property that's actually where Kitty, Ms. Murray's property is currently. So we have to discuss with those homeowners when they are ready for construction, the importance of how their driveway will affect not only our current sidewalk project, but runoff. And it will be up to them to address that when we're ready for land disturbance and for construction.
Okay. The sidewalks look very nice, you know, and we hate to see that get disturbed.
Continue to, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you all. Okay, with no comments from the public, council, do you want to move forward with this item as a consent item, or how do you, I see a thumb up. Any other? Yep, thumb. I need another thumb. There's some thumbs out there. Okay, that's for consent. Thank you. So with that being said, we'll close this item. Item C will be a consent. We'll move on to item D, which is the discussion of the Housing First Initiative. Councilwoman Bell.
Thank you. So I bring this item for discussion before the council and members of the public today after receiving a phone call from an entity as well as a resident around the influx of individuals that are unhoused. This is not the first time, of course. We all knew about it prior to on Market Street. And so this has, ultimately, I want us to take a proactive approach to addressing this matter. And so I was doing some research and saw that the county already has a program of some sort, a rapid rehousing program, and they're providing housing for up to 12 months. And so I think that we could go into partnership with the county to provide like their rapid response to assisting these individuals that are unhoused. I don't think that it's a public safety. It is an issue, but it's not something that they actually have the capacity for. And I'm just speaking out from my perspective, the capacity for and the expertise to actually address the influx of unhoused individuals that we have in the city right now. And so for me, talking to residents as well as business owners, there's a safety concern for these unhoused individuals. But for me, ultimately, I want to have an initiative that will provide rapid response for the need for housing, ensure that if they desire community service provided to them.
Can other people hear Councilwoman Bell, or has she frozen for everybody?
Frozen.
Frozen.
It's frozen. And so hopefully she can come back. She was so
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now you're back. Okay, great.
Sorry.
No problem.
So I'm gonna give the condensed version of this. So essentially, I want us to take a proactive approach. I've done some research. I've looked at some models presented by the coalition, the Coalition for Homelessness, as well as just know from working at Covenant House, which house homeless individuals age 18 to 30, that we need to address this issue. This is not a public safety issue. This could be a slew of issues as to why an individual is unhoused, which is why I added the assessment piece in there. The county already has a program that provides housing, which is something that we don't have enough housing to provide for them here, nor do we have a program and a structure already set up. And the program that the county has to provide housing to them for up to 12 months, which could help stabilize them. But I think that from the perspective of serving individuals, there may be other services that are needed, like transportation, if they, do need some medical or mental health treatment, as well as medication if they do not have jobs. And so as we all know, like the primary causes of homelessness could be a wide range of things, from housing affordability gap to COVID-19, the loss of a job, grieving the loss of a family member. And so today I invited the DeKalb County Department of Community Services to be here. However, they weren't able to because they just didn't have enough time to put the presentation together. However, they said that they may be able to attend our council meeting for a presentation so that we will know the full scope of the services that they provide and how this will work. I don't think this is something that the council necessarily would have to do anything with. I think it's more of administrative. I just wanted to put it here so we can take a proactive approach of how we're going to address the unhoused. But also there could be an MOU between us and the county and the local service provider, and that could be done with the city manager and the city staff to put it together. The only thing that the council would have to do is figure out how much, if we choose to move forward with this, how much funds that we would allocate towards additional services that we would help to provide supplemental support, transportation, food, medication, all those things. And so I really wanted to discuss it, but also get your recommendations if there are other ways that y'all feel like we can address the unhoused individuals that we have in the community, because the call that I received, which I sent over to the city staff, people are alarmed. They are worried about their safety, and they're worried about the safety of the individuals. And so this issue, I think, is an opportunity with ARPA funds, because we don't know what the core issue is as to why they become unhoused, to address it adequately in partnership with the county.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bell. And actually, the other piece is Councilwoman Johnson is actually on the committee with the other city municipalities that are dealing with homelessness. So some of the things that you're talking about, Councilwoman Johnson is working with the other cities and the representatives to do this. So I don't know, Councilwoman Johnson, if you wanted to kind of touch based on that piece.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, once I got the call, Councilwoman Bell, I did reach out to Homeless DeKalb and I did tell them what was going on. And there's a lot of things in position, but due to the cold season, they are swamped. But they are working to get the right individual to come out here to assess the people that we have in these areas. And they're working on some pilot programs for future housing and mental assistance and things like that. So what I could do is I can get you connected. I did receive a call from CEO Thurman's office in reference to these issues as well. And they're actually working on coming out here and assessing our community because we are in DeKalb County and offering the assistance that these individuals need. But they did tell us to be careful with our approach because we're not, no, you may have a different medical background. We're not medically qualified to approach based on some of the resources that Pastor Adams and some of the other community members gave us. I know I'm not. And I also had the pleasure of speaking with, what is his name? Tommy Phillips III, who heads the, what is that? It's called, they went out last week on the 17th and did a head count of all the homeless people in DeKalb County, and they did come through here. And he's gonna give me an account of what he found. But as far as they have to know where they are, and they have to do it at night to find out what they can do to assist. So it's a lot of people connected and a lot of resources. So I'll be more than happy to speak with you and to pull you into some of these emails that I have and municipalities, because there's a lot of resources out there.
That's helpful, but I still want us to move forward with providing adequate housing for them. And maybe Councilmember Johnson, that's where we can get all these parties together. But I still think there needs to be an agreement that this is happening and we have a timeline for it, because the real issue or the real concern that I have is that we've known that we had individuals that were unhoused in our city for quite some time now. And so working with the local providers and talking to Friends of Refugees as well as Inspiritus, they just don't have the capacity to come out and assess. So we have local community providers that could assess. They don't have the capacity. And so that's why I think that, you know, the foundation to servicing someone is, yes, assessing them, but housing comes first before those other things can come into play. As a licensed social worker. And so if anything, there still needs to be, like, we can still have those conversations, which I think are great. So thank you for all your work, but we still need to come up with an MOU to house them as they come in, and then hopefully successfully assess them and provide adequate treatment so that they won't be unhoused and they will be stabilized for the long term, whether it's treatment, housing, or whatever the services that we can render.
Thank you. I think Councilwoman Hood and then Vice Mayor Yasser.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Bell, I commend you for bringing this forward, and Councilmember Johnson for adding to this information based on what you're working on now. Just a question, the $100,000, is that, do you have any calculations? Is it budget based on what would go here, how many people could be served, et cetera? So if you could just let me know, or I realize sometimes when we don't have that much information, we can pick a number. So any information you can share along those lines would be helpful.
Yeah, so it'd be up to the council outside of the agreement if we even decide to allocate additional funds. But originally my thought was, Councilmember Hood, was for transportation outside of the housing facility they were placed in, as well as medication, which can get really expensive, especially if it's psychotropic medication or even any mental health, even any medical prescriptions that they may have, as well as like food on a consistent basis, and any other additional support that they outline that will help them stabilize. And so $100,000 was just an amount that I put out there. But like you said, I don't have the data to indicate how many people we would serve, the timeline, where, what they need, because they haven't been assessed. And so that number could change. It could be fluid, but it will be based off the council's recommendation.
All right, thank you very much.
So is this 100,000 ARPA funds? Are we talking about?
We are talking about our funds, but that's, so I'm reiterate this by saying that the $100,000, we don't know what the issue is. As I mentioned in the purpose, like they could become unhoused due to loss of jobs due to COVID, grieving of a family being lost, or just not being able to afford housing because it's not affordable for them for whatever reason. And so I put that amount in there, but until we actually officially get in an agreement, understand all the services that we can provide or what other service providers can provide, I don't think that we should move on the $100,000 until we have more data, or because we don't know what that number could be. So I'm flexible with that. That's why I brought it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
So is this something we're gonna take to our retreat, or it needs attention now? The further discussion. I think she's disconnected.
Councilwoman Bell?
She's disconnected.
Okay, so hold that. Vice Mayor Yasu and then Councilwoman Hopkins, and hopefully she can come back.
I think, I mean, the cause is really novel cause, but I really have, my thought is, I think this is really a bigger issue beyond not just in the city of Clarkston. I mean, this is a national issue. This is a statewide issue. This is countywide issue. And there are already programs both from federal government and particularly from DeKalb County that address this problem. And there is already funding. And I think this is really way beyond our capacity as a city. I know we could help one or two or three people, and I'm just not sure this involves so many levels, including mental health. We don't have any facility that deals with those kind of issues. So, I mean, we right now, if somebody has issues because of COVID, if he's losing his home, we still have rental assistance or something. But I'm not really sure if we have any clear parameters for what we're going to help the homeless. I mean, the idea is great. I mean, it's great to help the unhoused, but how are we going to help them? And what are we going to provide for them? So I think I would rather stick with the idea of if the county is given this already, there is somebody providing these services. I would rather stick out to the county and get assistance and bring the attention of the county to these individuals and connect them with the county instead of using our own funding and start a new program that we don't have at all and that we don't know how to work on. So, I mean, I definitely sympathize with the cause, but I really am not sure what we can do about it. I think this is way beyond our capacity. That's just how I feel about it.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Yasu. Councilwoman Hopkins.
Thank you. I just, at the risk of like quoting our former council member, Mark Perkins, who was very much into the asset-based community development, I think one of their original principles is to do an inventory of what's already there and what's going on. What are the assets we have to work with? And then also assessing the degree of the problem. And I'm hearing like conflicting views. I think Councilwoman Bell just said, well, you know, these folks that are out there don't have the resources to come and assess our situation. At the same time, I think Councilwoman Johnson just said somebody was out last week and did a head count. And so these assessments are happening. So I think we really need to like merge this information together and first to assess the degree of the problem that's in Clarkston and assess what assets we have. I don't want to just throw money at a problem and create an MOU without really having done the basics to see what are the ingredients that we have to work with or to reinvent the wheel on programs that are already going out there. Maybe we can, the most effective use of our money would be to help develop what's out there. And as you said, Councilwoman Bell, work with DeKalb County and work with these other agencies that Councilwoman Johnson's working with. But I think we need to do an inventory first and see what we've got, and, you know, have some idea when we start throwing a number out there. First develop the shopping list and then decide what we need, decide how big our problem is. I think, you know, it might be a good topic for the retreat, or maybe we can just communicate with those of you who have already apparently started gathering information, and put all our heads together and find out what we can do. I don't think we're in a position that we're ready for something like an MOU and, you know, to vote on a number, because right now that number honestly is just a grab. And we don't even know what we would spend it on. Where's the most effective? I mean, I do understand that there's more needed than housing, transportation, medication, all of that. But if there's already the infrastructure in place to do that, and we can like just assist those organizations with the funding there, it would be better than creating our own separate infrastructure.
So to your point, Councilwoman Hopkins, just so you kind of, I'll bring this back up again. So what happened was with the other cities, they were talking about the issues that they saw with homelessness in their communities, and that, for example, in Fulton County, there's more structure and more facilities in their area versus what we have in DeKalb County. So as a result of that, they decided to come up with a homeless committee to have representatives from the different municipalities to be a part of this, so that we could work with the county, look at it holistically, look at those solutions that may work out, and maybe have some synergy across the municipalities in terms of how we deal with it, and maybe even from a financial perspective with it. So then that's when they asked us to appoint people to it. And so I think at a meeting we appointed Councilwoman Johnson to kind of work with them and be our liaison as part of it. And so I think, and thank you, Councilwoman Bell, for really kind of like pushing and bringing this point up. So I think making sure that what we're doing with what Councilwoman Johnson is doing with the other municipalities, and taking these points that Councilwoman Bell is bringing up, to make sure that we look at these other pieces to it, how once we get them housing, what the medicines and everything else that they need, all of those are good points that we need to make sure that we look at in terms of how we deal with our homeless situation here, but also what the collective other municipalities along with DeKalb County are doing with it as well. And Councilwoman Johnson, did I miss anything with that part of it?
You did not, Madam Mayor, because the resources are there. I called Gateway. And just another thing, I even had Mr. Johnson, I think he was on the line earlier, from our local Veterans Association. He was initially the one that reached out to the CEO's office. So basically we needed to get someone to assess the people we have here so that they'll know which direction to go in. The veterans have their own housing, and Gateway is available. Gateway did have 42 beds available. I did call, so Gateway is available, but we cannot transport the homeless individuals to Gateway based on their mental status, and we don't have that capability of interacting with them, if you get what I'm saying. So that's why they're trying to find someone to come out and actually assess them, see if they want, some of them don't want to be housed. So that's what they're working on right now, but it's a really big project, really big.
So,
but you did good with that.
Okay. And then, so Councilwoman Bell, and I know that with your initiative and then what Councilwoman Johnson is working on, maybe the two of you can kind of talk more about this, or what do you think?
Yes, I'm thinking initially that I'm willing to talk to Councilmember Johnson about the contacts that she's having. What I will say is that the homeless population and finding spaces and beds for them, they go really fast. So just because an entity had a space today, tomorrow that is not always the case. What I also would say, there's something called mobile crisis. So we're not trying to transport anybody that's having an episode of any sort. There are services for that will transport them. Mine is the long-term investment in individuals. We can't be transactional where we give them services one time and then we give them housing and we think we're going to stabilize and not come back here, because I don't know where they're from, right? They could be from our city. They could be from the city next over. What I'm trying to do, or what I want to do, let me keep this brief. I want to send this item to committee. Me and Councilmember Johnson, I think we serve on the same committee. At that point, Councilmember Johnson, you can discuss and you can add me to those conversations that are already started, as well as I can hopefully have the county to come over still to tell us who they're working with in partnership. I do think that this is our city. Those are residents that reside here on our streets. And so, yes, this seems like a big project. That's why we work in partnership with infrastructure that's already there. But it's something that we don't need to wait until it gets worse and worse. This is something that we need to address now. In 2017, it was bad, right? 18, 19, we knew that we had unhoused individuals here. And we waited for the county or other service providers. And as it relates to clarify, Laura, on the point of not having a service provider, the service providers that we have in our community in Clarkston and nearby in DeKalb, they don't serve unhoused individuals. That is not the scope of their work. So when I mentioned that they don't have the capacity and that's not there, that's because they're not funded to serve unhoused individuals, which is a whole nother issue that we have in our county. And so to proceed forward, I would like this item to go to community development. Yeah.
Okay.
And then me and Councilmember Johnson will have further discussions.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Bell. And I see Chief Hudson has her hand raised. Chief Hudson, go ahead and talk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My Officer Frazier went out with that crew last week and did the count. And I just spoke with him. And he stated they only found one person that was homeless in Clarkston. And then there were 3 homeless people across from an abandoned house on Northern Avenue. So I just wanted to give you all that information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And thank Frazier for us, Chief, please.
Yes.
Ma'am.
Thank Frazier for us. I gave them his contact. So thank him for us.
Yes, ma'am, I sure will.
And Vice Mayor Yasu.
I just want to also share that I'm not sure if that's the same individual, but I was contacted by the Ethiopian community members about one Ethiopian American who is a homeless, and he's been homeless for the last 30 years or 40 years, I think. So some issues are not really really easy to fix, and I know that individual has been getting help from the Ethiopian community at large and overall, but like what Councilmember Johnson was saying, there are some individuals who are really who will not be able to we cannot help. This is really beyond a lot of our capacity, and as much as we would like to help, I think so we definitely could take a comprehensive approach, and thanks to Councilmember Bell, she wanted to put it on the committee, so it could be definitely discussed further. But some of the few individuals that I know has been homeless for a long time, ever since I've been in the city, I've known them, and especially one of them. And they are not a threat to the community. I don't see any homeless person who's a threat or who's threatening anybody. So I'm really glad, and thanks to our chief is on the line. So if there are any, definitely we would definitely know. But I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you. City Manager Kawi, do we have any other comments from the public on this item?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor. We have Mr. Medford.
Mr. Medford?
Yes, so I really like the spirit of this idea. When I was driving around the other day, my kids asked, why were those people camping in the woods right off of Main Street there? And I had to explain to them that they didn't have a home. And so I can see where, yes, there are things available through the county, but at times the county is just such a lumbering mess to deal with. While yes, they can wield large amounts of help, sometimes it's hard to get it pointed in the right direction. And so sometimes I think it's better to have a little bit of local help in this kind of situation. I don't think we can take on the world of homelessness, but I think there's ways we could help here in the city. And I think also if we're going to talk about the issue of unhoused, we also have to talk about the issue of housing availability in the city. And I think if we're going to talk about availability of housing and being unhoused, we have to talk about this being another kickoff point and reason to discuss housing availability at different pricing points throughout the city, including infill housing for more housing options. That missing middle, which our former mayor brought up in the county commissioners meeting today, is missing. And so the housing and more creative options for housing that won't solve everybody's unhoused problem. But I think there's some things we can definitely do to help, and definitely, from the mental health standpoint, that's a difficult nut to crack. That's a very difficult thing to help somebody with. But as I said, I think we might be able to find some ways that as Clarkston City, we understand some of these people a little bit better than DeKalb County would. And so we have people here that may be a little bit more in touch. And so spending some money, I have no idea what that amount would be. $100,000 might be it, might not be. But I think there is some local possibility that we could help here outside of having DeKalb County. I just think the county can't focus small enough for us, and we just kind of get lost a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Medford. Anyone else? Ms. Kelly? No? Okay, I saw no. Okay, thank you.
No, I didn't know.
Okay, so with that being said, we can put this as on the consent agenda to refer to committee, which is the Community Development Committee. Is that fine with everyone? Okay, all right, thank you. We'll move on with no other discussion from the council or the public. We'll move on to the next item, which is item E, a discussion of a petition requesting the installation of speed tables on Wagner Street. City Manager, Ms. Cowie?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the property owners that have access driveways located on Wagner Street, addressed as 3757 Church Street and 3769 Church Street. Mr. Goff and Ms. Andres says that the excessive cut-through traffic and increased rates of speed is hindering the quality of life, and is requesting that speed tables be considered to be installed to curb those drivers from speeding. Madam Mayor, Ms. Andres and Mr. Goff, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, is in attendance if you have any additional questions.
Ms. Kathleen, would you like to speak?
I would love to speak, Mayor Burks. And I know several of you have been out to our wonderful little street there. And I know it's a great little street, but it is sometimes like I-285, you know, in the middle of the day. There's a lot of traffic, it's consistent, and actually pulling out of the driveway sometimes is an issue. And we both have, I know that Steve Goff has a long-term tenant there. I've got a new tenant who has moved in. And when we had discussed and requested the closing of the street, some of the council members had proposed speed tables possibly being an option to address the constant flow of traffic there. And it is a quality of life, as Ms. Cowie, our city manager, has said. So we petitioned as we thought was appropriate, and we appreciate being put on the agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Stephen, did you want to make any comments?
I mean, I think everything's pretty much already been said, but yeah, there's a littering problem as well, which is a result of people driving through on our back vacant lots. But yeah, just, you know, we'd like to propose something that will help quell the cut through nature of that street and the speed as well. I think some of the council people have been on this property before and actually witnessed it. They've seen the volume of traffic that comes through it. So we're just looking to get a little help here.
Council or Mr. Kaiser, did you have any comments? I see you came online.
Yes, Ms. Mayor. So I looked at the petition, and typically, just like chicanes or ease-abouts or speed tables, those all three typically, traditionally, universally, across the United States, they're usually spaced between 300 to 500 feet apart. Wagner is 243 feet. So if council chooses to put a speed table in, I would recommend one speed table. We've already identified where that would be if council decides to move forward with it. Part two of this conversation is the condition of the pavement. The road is actually very poor, I would say very poor. It's in poor condition. It will be eligible for resurfacing in the next year or two, provided council chooses to resurface that road under LMIG. So I would suggest that the cost to mill and resurface that road after a speed table goes in, you're basically going to increase the cost of resurfacing most probably by 25%, because you got to worry about drainage. You got to mill up on both sides of the speed table. It's just a real pain for a contractor to do that. And so, the cost for milling and the cost for, I got it here in my memo, on the cost for, let me look at it here. The cost to mill and the cost to resurface, that section of Wagner would be right around $11,000.
Mayor Burks, may I say something? If anybody wants to sell it to us, we'd still, I think there was a number on the table that was roughly half of that. I think Mr. Goff and I would still consider purchasing the street, but that, and I understand where also, Mr. Kaiser, where have you determined a table would go?
I can show you in the field. We did not mark it with paint, so I can show you.
Okay, is it near church or near Rowland?
No, it's approximately halfway between. So the driveway that is closest to Rowland Street, if you look at that driveway, if you're facing that driveway in Wagner, if you're facing the driveway straight ahead, it is to the left of that driveway by about 10 feet or so. And that puts you right about in the center, distance-wise, between Church and Wagner.
Okay, thank you. And I think Mr. Goff and I might like to come out and see where that is, depending on what happens this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Council, Vice Mayor Yasu, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I definitely sympathize with the residents that they have to deal with speeders. However, knowing that that's a very short street, and they're asking for 2 speed tables, I really am not sure if that is feasible, knowing that it's a very short street and probably reducing it to 1 speed table instead of 2, somewhere in the middle would be feasible to me, because I'm pretty sure we have speeding issues on other streets as well, on other roads in our city that are a lot bigger than that road. So just to, to make sure we also address similar issues uniformly, I would think probably we could consider reducing the amount of speed tables just to 1 instead of 2.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilwoman Hood.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Kaiser, did I hear you correctly where you said that the best approach might be to wait until we address the other issues with the condition of that street? And when we do that, add the speed table at that time? Can you repeat?
Or do it concurrently, Councilwoman.
What?
Do it concurrently. So fund the resurfacing milling now and then immediately put in the speed hump after that.
Okay. And you recommend that because if you put the speed table in now, it will make the resurfacing, the milling, et cetera, more expensive.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, and now if we put this on the list or whatever for this funding, when would you estimate the actual work would be done? Because sometimes there's a big gap between when something gets the money and when it actually gets done.
So we would add this to the SPLOST 04 B&C project, which is the Rowland Street project. When the resurfacing is done on Rowland Street, on Rogers Street, we would add that to the contract as a change order and do the speed table and resurfacing milling all at the same time.
Which would be approximately
This spring, April, May.
okay. And while we're talking about the other work on Rowland, would a speed table there have any effect, positive or negative or anything relative to the work that's planned for Rowland?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
And Councilwoman Johnson, I just want to make sure, did you have your hand up? You okay?
Lowered it. Yeah, I'm good.
Lowered. Okay, you're good. Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Hopkins.
Okay, I have a few concerns here. One is that I feel like we might be sending good money after bad because the traffic on that street has vastly increased since we added the left in, left out at Rogers. So now if anyone is coming north on Indian Creek and wants to go down that way, they have to go up to Church Street. And then they're probably going to go down as far as Wagner. They're not going to go all the way to Lovejoy rather than just making a left onto Rogers, excuse me, which they can't do anymore. So we have driven the traffic onto that street that would not have been otherwise. We've increased the traffic there. If we're to close it, then they just have, well, actually, if they're coming from the south side, they have to go all the way down to Lovejoy, which is insane. But the other thing is we are then creating great difficulties for first responders. Every speed table will slow down an ambulance by 10 seconds. We put in 2 speed tables, that's 20 seconds. We're already putting in a traffic calming device at the end of Wagner, right? With that little sort of triangle left in, left out thing. Again, making it more difficult for us to get down. So I think by adding speed tables as well, God love the people back there if they need an ambulance because it's going to take it a lot longer. I think we should wait. It is a very short street and we already have 1 traffic calming device going in at the end of it. And I just don't think we should, we've set up the whole town to drive as much traffic down there as possible. And then to put a speed table there, that's also the route that an ambulance or a fire truck is going to have to take. And I think we need to be mindful of that and discuss it with the people that live back there. Even the ones in those condos there that aren't in Clarkston, but that's how their emergency services are going to be getting there.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hopkins. Okay. Any other comments from the council on this item? Okay. Hearing none, City Manager, Ms. Cowie, do we have any from the public?
We have a Miss Allison Sanchez, but I don't see her.
Sanchez? I don't see her either. Okay.
Then we have Medford.
Mr. Medford.
Hi, I am.
Oh, I missed Ms. Medford. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Sorry. I am super concerned that the council is having these discussions and hasn't talked to a single resident on the street. Like nobody has reached out and talked to anybody living here. I get that Kathleen and Mr. Goff are the property owners, which is nice. They don't live on the street where the traffic is all the time, like we do. And I can tell you that, yes, there is a lot of traffic, but no, it's not speeding traffic down Wagner. That's a short street. The cars just can't build up that much speed. On Church Street, yes, there's traffic. And in fact, Kathleen made the point that the issue of getting in and out of the driveways can be difficult. Those driveways are on Church Street. So putting a speed table on Wagner doesn't affect that. That's not going to help anything on Church Street. And yes, people speed down Church Street plenty. I can't solve that either, but that's on Church Street. As for Rowland Street, Laura makes an excellent, brilliant point. You are already solving the traffic and the speed by adding the roundabout, whatever shape thing you're putting where Wagner comes into Rowland. Do not even think of doing this until after you get that piece done and then see if the problem is still there. Because doing it right now is a lot like my kids who at 5:30 while I'm making dinner come and ask me for a snack because they're hungry. Wait until dinner. If after dinner you're still hungry, you can have a snack. Wait until this traffic calming chicane roundabout T-shape goes in at Wagner and Rowland. Then if there is still a problem with speeding, then contact the residents and discuss a speed table. But certainly do not do it now without even talking to anybody that lives here. And those are only 2 houses, both of which face Church Street.
Mayor
Thank
Burke,
you. Yes.
I'd like to correct the statement that was just made. Our driveways are not on Church Street. Mr. Goff, is your driveway on Church or is it on Wagner?
They're both on Wagner.
Yeah, mine is also on Wagner. I do not have a driveway on Church Street. It belongs to the person next to me who has the beautiful pale green house that was painted over the red house. So we do not have access on Church Street. It's only on Wagner Street.
Thank you for that clarification. Have we put any, we have the speed monitor things. Have we done that just to see what the speed is on that street or anything like that? Okay. Just curious to see what we have out there. Okay. Council, did you have any other comments about this?
I mean, the one thing I would add is that it seems like that if we're not going to be able to do it really until we do the repaving a year from now, I think by then the roundabout should be completed. So then we can re-examine. I don't think it costs us anything to re-examine the situation then, since we won't be able to do it for a year anyways. And maybe the roundabout will solve it, or maybe it won't, but we'll know more after the roundabout is done.
And Mr. Kaiser, how far are we into that roundabout?
Yeah, the ease about. The ease about is it's going to. So the reason for the delay, as we all know, is the Georgia Power has not relocated their pole yet after 8 months, and so they have a task order now to have it removed within 2 months. Once that occurs, the ease about will go in about 3 days. So we're looking at sometime April, May, towards the end of the project, to have the ease about in.
How many months again?
I said by the end of May, end of April, first part of May is when the ease about will be installed.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So no other comments from the public, council?
No.
Okay. All right. So council, on this item, how do you want to proceed with this? Do you want to wait until we have the ease abouts, or what do you want to do? And I saw Vice Mayor Yasir.
I think since there is no consensus with the council right now, I would rather, just like Councilmember Carroll said, let's wait until the ease about is done, and so we can see if it does solve some of these concerns. And we definitely will see if we can either, for the necessity, and also, of course, we're gonna have to speak to the neighbors as well. And but instead of doing it now, let's just wait and see, and hope that things will get better. But if not, we definitely could revisit it in the future. But I think right now I don't see any consensus from the council, so I don't see the point of probably not even tabling this. I think this agenda item is just mute at this point.
Council? Wait until we have the roundabouts or ease abouts, or how do you want to proceed? And then come back, or maybe come back to this item.
I mean, the other thing I would suggest is maybe we can measure the speed now with one of the things, and then measure it again after the ease about. And then that will maybe give us more information to make a decision after the ease about is put in.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, did we use the speed device to see exactly how fast we have down that street? Because in that way we can use that information to have, as Councilman Carroll said too, as a baseline, so that we can say baseline before the ease about, this is where traffic was. After the ease about, this is where it calmed or increased or whatever. Is that something? Okay. Councilwoman Hopkins.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think we have anything to vote on for the next meeting as such. We can gather information, but there's no.
So Ms. Kathleen.
Yes, ma'am, Mayor.
Okay, so you hear, we listening to you.
No, I think, no. Everybody's been very fair. And I think a lot of this is, I know that Steve Goff and I were never contacted when everything on Rowland was going through and on Indian Creek, and it has increased the traffic there. I've owned the property since 2017 or 2016. And I think, may I ask, I don't know how the recording devices work, if they record going south from Church Street or going north from Rowland, but the traffic, the heavier traffic would be going south from Church Street, the heavier speed traffic.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and I see Mr. Kaiser.
Yeah. So when the ease about goes in, that traffic movement from Church to Wagner will be, I believe, most probably cut in half, because there'll be no more left turns from Wagner onto Rowland. All the movements will be from Wagner right onto Rowland. And if you're on Rowland going towards downtown Atlanta, the only move will be take a right onto Wagner or go around the ease about. So there'll be no more left turns from Wagner onto Rowland, and no left turns from Rowland onto Wagner.
You know what, Mr. Kaiser? I never knew that. So that solves, I think that will solve a lot of the issue. Yes. We never were apprised of that.
Well, I'm glad you got on the call, Ms. Kathleen, and we were able to walk and talk this through.
Well, I'm glad Mr. Kaiser was on the call, as well as everyone in the city of Clarkston, which is a great city.
Kathleen, this was discussed when the council discussed this actually last year. Council may not remember this, but when I contemplated the ease about that location, we talked about the traffic being on Wagner being cut in half. And so we contemplated your concerns.
Thank you very much. And
Okay.
from your mouth to what occurs. That's great.
Great. And Councilwoman Hood.
Yes, now that you have mentioned that, Mr. Kaiser, getting back to Councilmember Hopkins' concerns, so emergency vehicles, including large fire engines, can still manipulate that, ease about, and get left if they need to?
Yes. So the design is exactly the same design, no exceptions, as the ones on Norman Road. So we have rollback curbing, and the fire department has already tested those out on Norman before we put them in 3 years ago. We asked them to come over and test them. We modified the design with their input, with their extended fire truck, their ladder truck, and so they'll be able to do the same thing with that Isabel. Absolutely.
From Wagner, or would they have to come from Lovejoy or whatever?
Yeah, no. If they wanted to roll over that curb from Wagner, taking a left onto Rowland, they can do it with the ladder truck. Absolutely.
Okay, great. The big boat rule. The second thing I just want to bring up for consideration is that in the future, perhaps when we are looking at making changes, either with speed tables or any changes to our road system, maybe we need to start sending out letters to property owners who within a certain distance, I realize on Wagner, there are only 2 property owners right there, but nonetheless, there are other people who would be impacted by things that we do on our street system. I know we started doing that with our zoning requests, notifying people within a certain distance. And I think even though we discuss these things at council meetings, people don't always know what's happening until, the dirt's turned and the bulldozers show up. So let's consider that for, adding to our approach to changes to our transportation infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So this item, which is item E, we've had it for discussion, so we can just take that off from the council agenda going forward. Thank you all for your conversation, and thank you, Mr. Kaiser and Ms. Cowie, for the updates and the information for us. And so with that, we'll close out that item. We'll move on to item F, which is the discussion of resolution to encourage the DeKalb County Commissioners to provide additional translation for voting information and material. Councilwoman Bell.
Thank you. So I'll be brief. So essentially, this is just a resolution to urge the DeKalb County commissioners, as well as the voter registration and elections office, to act and expand language access. Right now, in 2020, we know that DeKalb County, they began to offer voter information in Spanish and Korean, which is great, right? But our top 3 languages outside of English that are spoken here are Somali, Burmese, and Arabic. And so we know that that's a barrier for individuals to be a part of, to participate in the voting process. And so we want to reduce that issue to help people with low English proficiency understand and articulate who they are voting for, what they're voting for, and ensure that they're well-informed residents in our city by just encouraging DeKalb County to expand language access by adding 3 different languages, which are our top languages here in the city of Clarkston. And so I drafted up a resolution here. There's old numbers around the percentage of individuals in our city that speak language as a second language. The census has 58.6%, but that was a survey from households from 2015 to 2019. So that's what I have here. And I'm open for discussion or just figuring out what we can change again. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna close it there. But I wanted any discussion or any recommendations y'all have that we can add to or move forward with this resolution?
Council? Yes, Vice Mayor Yasu.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I definitely want to thank Councilmember Bell for bringing this as somebody whose English is whose maybe fourth language. I'm not sure. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, and I do interact with so many of our residents whose English is definitely not their second language or third language even. So it definitely is an issue. However, I have never heard anybody who had issues with voting. They've been voting and they definitely are okay with it. But I think it would be great to add, but unfortunately, I know we can't control it. Wish we could have our own election board or something, which is not going to be easy to do. And I definitely agree with the spirit of it. And I mean, it's just a resolution, and I mean, it wouldn't hurt. The only thing I'm concerned about is Section 4, which says Clarkston is known as Sanctuary City. And I do not want us to set ourselves up because the state legislature have had so many things that they passed that actually would take away their funding from cities who are sanctuary cities. And I mean, of course, I like the idea. I do consider myself living in a sanctuary, but I would not want to put it on a resolution, or I personally would I would not recommend, at least, or advise to put it on the resolution. So I would rather advise the council to remove that language from the resolution, and yeah, just to make sure we don't want to lose our funding from the state for a minor thing. And unfortunately, our state legislature is not just simply to put friendly about the whole idea of sanctuary cities. So yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
To your point, Vice Mayor Yasu, we're known more so as a welcoming city. And then that way, from a welcoming city, it doesn't violate anything in terms of what the state statute has for municipalities calling themselves sanctuary cities. And I see Mr. Quinn popped up.
Before Attorney Quinn goes, so what I'll say is I'm okay with amending Section 4 and putting that Clarkston, the city has an intent to promote public safety and removing that language if people are uncomfortable. We're definitely not a welcoming city just yet because we haven't even been certified to do data collection and assess how welcome we are. Attorney Quinn.
No, we are. We had a resolution that said we are a welcoming city. So that's separate from the Welcome America. But as a city, we did that a while ago, back in 2014, I think that we were a welcoming city. So Mr. Quinn?
I agree with what Vice Mayor Yasu raised as a concern about using that phrase. I just think it would, my advice would be that we might buy some unnecessary trouble by putting that on a resolution.
Any other concerns with the language or anything else? I think we're good with that. Any other changes, Council? Yes, Councilwoman Hopkins.
This is just a question thrown out to anybody who might know, but how hard is it to gain citizenship if you don't speak English? I know we have a lot of people that are legal residents. My mother was a legal resident for, I think, 40 years. I mean, I might have been quite old when she finally got around to getting her citizenship, although she always had a green card. But I know she did have to take an exam in English when she finally got around to it, and take an oath in English. So I'm wondering, are there a lot of people who would be eligible to vote that are barred from that by language? And I see Councilman
Yes, Vice
has
Mayor,
an answer
yes.
to that.
Yeah, as a naturalized American citizen, I had to take the test as well. And I think it just depends, Councilmember Hopkins, because there is no per se English test to be citizen. However, the test that they give you, it's like an interview. You go to an interview and they ask you several questions. It's all in English. It's going to be in English. So it doesn't really require proficiently speaking, or even if you have the basics, you can pass the test. However, they do require you to write something. Sometimes they'll just write you to write a table or a chair in English alphabet. I mean, of course, in English characters. So that could be challenging to somebody who's not literate. But the English test is very elementary. I mean, it's not very difficult unless somebody is totally illiterate and he cannot read and write. And there is an exemption to older people, I think. I'm not sure the exact age. I think it's above 65 or something. I can be corrected if I'm wrong. But if somebody's above that age, they give them an exemption on that English language requirement. So they do naturalize them without the testing and stuff, I guess. But the English test that they give you is extremely elementary, and it's, even the history questions, it's like 100 questions. You already have them. It's online. If you study those, it's going to be definitely one of those. So it's not, to somebody who speaks basic English, it's not hard. But if somebody is not a little bit versed, it could be challenging as well.
I was going to say her history test was not online. It may have been before the day of personal computers. So I don't think online was an option back then. It was paper and pencil. That's why I asked. I don't know. She had to be able to read it to take the test. Yeah, she's that old.
Okay.
So, and I asked because, I mean, yes, if people are eligible to vote, I wouldn't want language to be a barrier, but there's so much that we do that I feel like our residents could benefit from being translated, from the rental assistance, all of these ARPA things that, you know, we're putting out there, we're making available, but if we're not making available in the languages that our residents speak, it's only going to be helpful to a limited number of people. And I think people might like rental assistance probably before voting. Eating and living indoors is often a higher priority.
Thank you for your comment, Councilwoman Hopkins. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. And Ms. Cowie, did we have from the residents?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have the Medfords. They may proceed in alphabetical.
Okay, Mrs. Family, which order, whatever you would like to do.
I'll go first. I am really glad to see language translation being offered for voting materials. Way to go. And Laura, that is exactly what I was going to bring up, that the city needs to be providing more of its services and programs with language and in languages that are available to Clarkston. Offering things for translation shouldn't even be up for discussion or an afterthought in a city like ours, where the majority of our population are non-native English speakers. And it doesn't even, the other thing, I guess, is just that I love the idea and I want us to do this and ask the commissioners for voting, but I really want to push and encourage the council to look into other things that you guys can do and offer in language, that you offer things like most cities do, oh, here's your English, here's your Spanish. We should be doing things like, oh, here's your English, here's Somali, Burmese, Pashto, Arabic, whatever, because that's the base of our population. To be precise and on one that's coming up is the zoning rewrite that's coming up from the TAC, where they will open it up to public comment later in this year. I hope the city is right now already thinking of a way to offer this in more languages than just English so that we can gain a true public response and get true public input by offering these things in language.
Mr. Medford.
Thank you. So I love the direction of this, and especially encouraging the DeKalb County to think about outside, because we have so many people that, especially some of my old neighbors, started here in Clarkston, then moved outside the city to other areas of DeKalb County. So our old Bosnian neighbors are just around the road towards us, almost just a couple miles away from here. So they moved to. So encouraging the county to think a little bit more broadly, especially in the area, is great. And then also to show off a little bit here at home, to keep doing, like Amy said, keep translating for our own people. Maybe even things that normally wouldn't be translated. I'm a big fan of, I think we should translate the Georgia Renter Tenant Handbook into the more popular. I've threatened to do that for a couple people who are not treating their renters nicely. But just offering those different language options, just keep pushing, keep going, because once it's translated, yeah, you might have to update it every once in a while, but it's a good document to start from. So the hard work's been done, the heavy lifting's been done with the first translation. So I just want to keep encouraging these kind of ideas, and hope to see more discussion. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you all. And the other piece, and I know that we're going to have that discussion about ARPA funding, is that I wanted us to look at how we could do videos, because what has been an issue for many of the residents that I've talked to is that even though we may translate it, they still have issues understanding it from a government perspective once you try to translate some of the terminology and jargon that we have. But there may be some ways that we can do some videos to help and educate our community and use some of that ARPA funding to cover that as well. Councilwoman Bell, I don't think we have anything else as far as this resolution other than those comments. So
But
Council,
I also wanted to,
yes,
Madam
yes.
Mayor, if I could, those are wonderful ideas that internally we are working on. We're updating our website to make sure that we include translation services or the translation of our website to those residents who need resources. If you all don't remember, we also translated a survey for our residents for our comprehensive plan update. So those thoughts and those ideas are forefront for us. We understand our residents and we understand the majority of our population and who we need to address. So I'm so glad that these initiatives are a priority because they are already in the works. So thank you for your support on those ideas.
Thank you for the work of the staff. So we appreciate that as well. Okay, and thank you for making sure that we're in the loop as far as what the activities you're doing and the public to know as well. So thank you again. In any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move forward with this. Did you, and then I guess Councilwoman Bell, the recommendation changes, what were you going to make for that one?
Yeah, so I'll make the changes to section 4.
Okay.
To remove the sanctuary cities language out of here, and then I'll correspond with Attorney Quinn just to get the final sign off. But I want to move forward with this and put this, make sure this is on the agenda for the meeting.
Okay, so we'll have this one as on the agenda for the meeting. Okay, all right. Thank you all. And with that, we'll close out that item and move on to item G, which is the discussion to use $100,000 of ARPA funds to provide supplemental financial aid with provisions to residents tested positive for COVID-19 by a medical test provider. Vice Mayor Yasu.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to share a little bit. First, I just want to give out what's the rationale behind this. So I'm pretty sure you might have heard some individuals who test positive, but they don't have any symptoms and they don't feel any sick at all, and they have to go to work, and their employer does not give them any sick leave. And usually, you know, we human beings, we are nice, but if there's a financial incentive to do something risky, we tend to kind of do it and take the risk and endanger our friends and our coworkers in that process. So what I thought is remove that incentive, and then so the people whose employer doesn't provide sick leave, or who might allow them, they could stay home, but they're not going to pay them, and they don't have to worry about at least financially losing, or they don't have to worry about how they're going to make payments for their rent or for their food on the table or for their medicine, whatnot, so that we remove that concern as well. So the idea is to give supplemental financial assistance to residents who test positive and who lose weight in the process of getting quarantined. And based on the CDC recommendation, there's a recommendation for people to be quarantined or in isolation for 5 days. And those 5 days, if they're not covered by their employer's sick leave, some of our residents would probably weigh in, you know, try to see how they're going to provide for their family, or they would probably think twice. But if we remove that concern for them, I think that would be some way we could alleviate and reduce transmission of the COVID-19. And I'm pretty sure, unfortunately, sadly, that COVID is going to be with us for the next foreseeable few years. And we definitely going to have to quarantine if anytime we get tested positive, and we will have to continue doing the precaution of isolation and all that. So the idea is if an employer is not providing this sick leave, that the city would fill in and give some assistance to our residents who test positive. And right now, I'm thinking in terms of process for our staff, that the person who tests positive will definitely have to provide a proof of COVID test, which will have to be a PCR test. The second, they will have to provide that they have a proof of isolation. It could be from their employer, and they should have also to prove that there was loss of wage, and that could be provided that they could provide us with their pay stub before and after they tested positive for COVID, and that they lost wage and they didn't get paid by their employer. And the goal again is to remove the financial incentive for workers to go to work if they do not have any symptoms and want to avoid loss of wage. And another one is some people who might test positive and they might be showing some symptoms, but they just would probably conceal it, because if they know their employer is not going to pay them, they will probably just say, I got flu, I got cold, I got to go to work. I mean, I got to provide for my family. So I want us to remove that incentive or that reason for them to go to work to provide for their family. And this would help them recoup lost wage and be able to meet their needs, including paying for their rent and all that. Right now, the amount I'm thinking about is based on our history of being progressive, that we passed the $15 minimum wage to our employees. I want us to extend that similar rate to those people who might need this assistance. So I am really thinking about using that $15 minimum wage threshold to everybody, and that's 5 days by 8 hours is 40 hours, and that by $600, that would help about 166 families, and that would be in $600 per individual, and that would help about 166 individuals, using $100,000. And we could cap the amount maximum up to one time, or if it could be twice per year. I think that's the discretion of the council, but this is pretty much the proposal that I am thinking about right now. And again, I just want to make it clear that this will not pay for those people who get covered by their employer sick leave. Those people will not be covered by this program if they are already getting sick leave. This will cover only the people who do not get sick leave, or let's say they have exhausted their sick leave and their employer doesn't pay them. So we just want to remove that incentive for them to go to work. And I'm willing to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And Councilwoman Bell.
So, Councilmember, yes, I think this is a great measure because not only does it help with ensuring that people can feed themselves and their families while trying to quarantine, this actually is a safety measure or a preventive measure from them going back to work, spreading it to other folks, and it keeps them safe so they're able to successfully quarantine. The only question I have is centered around the timeline for this, as well as like the cap. You said that you wanted to cap it to maybe 1 or 2 occurrences of COVID. I don't know how we do that successfully, as well as I think there needs to be like a concrete time range, right? So, you know, every 3 months, you can't catch COVID every week or every 2 weeks. Those things, just we need to think through the logistical piece of that. Because I think if you catch it one time, not caught it, that you couldn't catch it for several months after. That's what they said. So I think that we may need some data around that piece, but I think overall the intent of the measure definitely to fill in those wages, making sure people can feed themselves and their family, as well as a quarantine and not be stressed or worried about how I'm going to feed myself, pay bills. That's important to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bell.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm gonna let some other people talk, Vice Mayor Yasu, because you no arguments on what you said. So any other parts, any other comments from the council first? None? Okay, Councilwoman Hood.
Yes, I also think that this is an excellent opportunity to help our community. The devil will be in the details, so to speak, because we have a lot of decisions to make about who this would be, people with part-time work and determining what their sort of typical part-time work is, and whether we would require proof of residency within the city, and a number of other things. I know that the proposal is to pay at $15 an hour, even though that may not be the amount that someone is paid per hour. So somebody might be making more than that, somebody might be making less than that. So I think there are a lot of sort of moving parts that we would want to, I think, discuss. And but I think this is a good program, good proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, and Councilwoman Hopkins. You're on mute, Councilwoman Hopkins. Okay, there we go.
I think I would agree with what Councilwoman Hood just said. I would like to hear from the city manager so far as how you feel, how difficult this would be to implement if we were to say they were required to bring like a medically certified or, you know, evidence of a positive test and like a check stub that indicated that they were out of work. But it, you know, obviously you're not going to be looking for sick time, because if you're seeing sick time on a check stub, that means they got paid for it. So you're looking for the gap. And so they'd need it like 2 paychecks. to do that. Do you think this would be an incredible headache for you, or you'd have to hire 3 more staff people if, you know?
We will take the 3 more staff people, but not for this matter here.
But volunteered that so quickly, but yeah.
But we will have to analyze a little bit deeper on how we want to receive that information as far as testing is concerned. Can they go to a healthcare provider and just provide a regular note from their primary physician to say that this individual has taken a COVID test and it is positive? Is that receivable information to, you know, analyze and say, okay, then we have that information and now your work. I don't think it will be a difficult process. It's collecting the data for it that we will need to get a little bit more information on what is acceptable for what Vice Mayor Yasu is trying to accomplish with this project. We can, again, it is the hourly rate, an $8 an hour employee, $15 is the maximum. Is this per person or per household? How do we analyze that part of the equation as well? Is it a maximum of $1,200? Because there's another avenue if you're also trying to provide assistance that ARPA can provide for residents. It doesn't necessarily have to be centered around, you know, COVID as well. But if you're trying to provide assistance for those who have tested positive, then maybe we need to go a little bit more deeper. But there is assistance that we can provide to an individual, you know, homeowner that has been affected by COVID in general and not, you know, COVID specifically. I mean, in general, because there are other options related to receiving assistance.
And thank you, Ms. Cowie. And maybe to the point that you just brought up, and I don't know if it would be even I think it would be beneficial for us to maybe at the council meeting in preparation for the retreat, you know, to have an understanding of how and what is appropriate allocation of fundings through ARPA. So as we're coming up with the ideas and we're coming up with the allocation amounts, we have a better understanding of what we can and can't do and what we can do in terms of the retreat, but also understanding that if we're coming up with these ideas, we need to make sure whether it's through committee or collaboration with staff and committee and whomever, that is kind of nailed down to things like the PCR test. Who are we going to accept the PCR test from? You know, how all of those little, the devil is, as Councilwoman Hood said, the devil is in the details. So council, and I'll let Vice Mayor Yasu talk about this, you know, proceeding forward, because I think everybody loves the intent of it. But it sounds like it needs to be, some more details need to be associated with this for us to move forward with it. So Vice Mayor Yasu.
Yeah, just not moving forward with this project, Madam Mayor. We really need to sit down and have those discussions on what we're actually, as a city, going to allocate all of our ARPA funds for. We have great ideas. We have positive initiatives, but we also need to know 5, 10, 15 years from now, what are the benefits from us allocating these funds that we have received from the federal government?
And I appreciate that. Vice Mayor Yasu.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'll try to answer each concern to my maximum ability to all these questions. So I'll start with Councilmember Bell's question about if we're gonna allow them twice or something. So what I was thinking is 6 months is usually what so far we have about people getting vaccinated. Usually the 6 month timeline is usually used. So for this is assistance. So we can just say one time, once, or we could just say twice. It really would not, my intent is to help as many as we can. So if we're gonna do that, I would say that we can just stick with one time at one person and one time per year. And we can just stick with that. And that still would help so many people. But if the council feels like we could extend it twice per year per individual, I think that would be allowable as well. So we're not going to have first of all, we're not going to have a lot of people, by the way, because we still have many people who are covered by their employer. So plus we don't have every single household member working. So we're not going to have multiple people from every household. So I think there is a lot of still other layers within this, but this would certainly help some individuals. So that is really up to the council if we feel like twice is reasonable. But if we're going to be generous, I would recommend stick with twice, and that would be a maximum of $1,200 per year per individual. So that's $15 for 4 times 40. That would be $600 per. And if we do it twice within 1 year, that would be $1,200, and that would be the maximum somebody could get. The second question was if we're gonna ask them if they're gonna be part-time or full-time. I have contemplated about this issue. I've thought about it, but usually when we're doing rental assistance, we really don't ask them if they're part-time or full-time. We just been helping them. If they cannot make payment for their rent, we usually help them. We don't really say pro rata to their employment. So I would stick with that. I would just leave it to the 5 days that CDC is asking them to quarantine. So just stick with 40 hours, which comes to be 40 hours. And I think it's still legitimate use of our ARPA money. So that's the biggest thing because somebody's being quarantined because of COVID. And even if he's part-time, he could have picked up more hours that week or any reason. So I think we probably could stick with our 40 hours, which is the 5 days requirement that CDC is requiring them. So I would not really worry about if they're part-time or full-time. I would still, that's just me though. The other one is proof of residence. Absolutely. They have to be residents of the city. They have to live within the city limit. And just like we're doing with rental assistance, it will be the same thing. They will have to live within the city limit. And another one is the amount of money. So this, I thought about this $15 minimum wage that our city provides to our employers. And I thought we could extend the same amount of money to everybody, regardless if they're getting $2, if they're tip workers or something. I think we should not be giving them just $2. And because that would leave it just flat and $15, regardless how much you make, you'll get $15 per hour. And that's just what I thought, that threshold that I got it from our resolution that we passed. And that's the amount I came out to, $600 per individual. The other question was Councilmember Hopkins brought to our city manager. I definitely appreciate our city manager saying that this is doable. And I mean, the process definitely, I mean, PCR tests, I've taken tests before. As long as it's from a medically, it could be CVS or it could be from a drive-through or any of those organizations doing it. It would have the name of the individual, and it would have to say if he tests positive. And even if he tests positive, it doesn't have employment, there is no way this is going to help them. So this is really targeted to those people who lose their wage because of being tested positive. And we're going to have to get them being tested positive is going to be important. And so nobody's going to go test positive just to get this money. And nobody's going to go get sick for this money. So I think that is definitely obvious. It could be any PCR test provider. It could be CVS. It could be anybody. As long as it shows that he tests positive and he didn't go to work and his employer has to be okay with it, we cannot warrant that. That is between him and his employer. However, if his employer doesn't provide him with his sick leave, that's where we come in and help them. What else? And if a physician does a test, absolutely, that's acceptable as well, I think, because his physician going to have to write him a letter saying he was test positive, or he will have to show us that somebody got to take a snapshot of the test positive thing. And what else? The max, we could stick with $600 once, or we could do it twice per year. That would be, the max could be $1,200 per individual. But that's really up to the city council. But this is just proposing that we can stick with $600 if we take that $15 minimum wage that we use for our city. But I'm really not okay with waiting to the retreat for allocating all ARPA money, because we got this. The money doesn't have to be allocated at one time, because that's not how we've been doing it. So we get new challenges, we get new things coming. So we already have been using the money since last year. So we didn't say we're gonna have to wait until retreat or anything like that. So we come with the council comes with, policies to address challenge. I think we should go ahead and proceed with this. And I strongly encourage our city manager, if they have to hire extra staff on a temporary basis, I think that's definitely within the purview of the city manager. And that's definitely something I strongly encourage our city manager to do if that's necessary. But last question was same. I think I answered the PCR test. The PCR, I say the PCR test because the home test is not something that it could be documented, but only PCR test is the one that's on the end. Home test, somebody tests positive at home, I would strongly encourage them to go to get a PCR test and confirm it that they got tested, that it's not false positive. And from there, if their employer is not gonna pay them, then the city would help them. So that's pretty much what it looks like. But if there are any more details, I am really more than willing to explain to our city staff or anything, and I'm really willing to. But the idea is, if somebody loses his hours, he got to prove he lost his hours, he got to prove he tests positive. Those are the two components. And those are the only two things that our staff needs to make sure. Of course, they have to live within the city limits. And the amount of money is something the council have to decide, if we want to give them only $600, or if we want to stick with their hourly wage, or if we want to give them more. It's up to the council, I would say. But I would really like to proceed with the $15 minimum wage, use it as an example for other cities, hopefully, to do the same thing. And this would definitely, I wish all the cities, even the federal government, was doing this, because this would have helped a lot of people and would have helped a lot of families from going to work and endangering their coworkers.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Yasu. Councilwoman Hopkins.
I am presuming we're going to have a way that this paperwork and application can be submitted online, even by email. It just dawned on me, the last thing we want is somebody who was just diagnosed positive to come in with their check stub and their positive test and hand it to Ms. Cooey in City Hall and start spreading illness. So I'm wondering if, that's the whole point of quarantine, right? You're not supposed to be around people. So I'm hoping, that we're going to figure a way that it can be done online, or it's going to be done after the fact. Perhaps if they can afford to do that after they finish their quarantine and then they can be around people again, they can come and submit the information in person. But otherwise, it would have to be online. And if it is after the fact, one of the things I'm thinking about is rather than limit the number of incidences that it can be used at, it might be better to just limit it to a dollar amount, because what if they're not asymptomatic or just mildly symptomatic? Like, what if they're actually sick? Maybe they want their $600 in 2 weeks right now because maybe they're really sick, like for a few weeks. And they're still missing work either way because they're COVID positive. But I mean, maybe a stranger walking past could also tell they were COVID positive, but still, shouldn't they be able to benefit if they're not asymptomatic for lost wages for being COVID positive? I say that because I'm going into a conference next week that's going to have 160 people in a room, at least one of which I know is out with COVID this week. But there's others who they had symptoms, you know, and if there's I know at least 2 people in Clarkston that had COVID in the last month that had symptoms, but it was like a mild cold. So at what point do you draw the line? What's actually symptomatic, what's not, and what's really the difference if people are still having to lose work? So why don't we, if they're sick for more than a week, just let them get the whole thing at once? They might not get sick next 6 months from now or a year from now. So I think we should just like set the dollar amount, and if they need it and they want it now, let them take the whole thing. If they just need, if they're asymptomatic and they just need to comply with the quarantine period, let them take 1 week now. And then if they should need it again later, it would be available later. But if they're not asymptomatic and they need it all now, let them do that. Okay.
Sounds like we got a lot of ideas that still need to be flushed out. From what I'm hearing from everyone. Vice Mayor Yasu, go ahead.
Yes. I just want to have to explain to answer these things. First of all, I mean, if somebody was test positive, they're not going to come right away because they're going to have to wait until they get their pay stub, and their pay stub is not going to come until 2 weeks after that, or it's going to be more than that actually. So we're going to check their pre-test pay stub, and we probably could ask them to get their employers. So this verification is going to be really flexibility of our staff. We're going to have to, some employers might write a letter saying, okay, this employee was absent, or they're going to have to explain why he didn't get paid or whatnot. But the idea is they will not come right away. So I'm just gonna rest assured that we're not gonna call people to come to the city hall and you're gonna get $600 if you test positive. That's not what we're saying right now. What we say, and by the way, the other question was, I'm not talking about their sickness. This is nothing to do with symptomatic or asymptomatic. This is only for the 5 days that they're missing out on for being isolated. And that is something that their employer will have to show that, you know, that he wasn't paid. That person was not paid from his employer for those 5 days. So this deals only with the 5 days that they lost to be isolated, whether they were symptomatic or not symptomatic. And usually a lot of people who are not symptomatic, they're the ones who are more likely to go to work, especially if their employer is not going to pay them for this 5 days isolation. But if somebody was symptomatic, they probably going to take more than 5 days off. But I think at this point, what we are proposing is just to partially help them. And hopefully that will be some help, the $600. So we're not going to ask them if they were symptomatic or not. This is not our concern at this point. What we're trying to do is to limit the number of people who go to work while they get tested positive for COVID, regardless of their symptoms or they have symptoms or not. And online would be great as well. I think if somebody can scan his pay stub, can scan his test positive, that's all we are asking. I mean, the same way that people were doing for the rental assistance program. people were scanning and emailing, even calling on the phone. And I'm pretty sure city manager had so many cases. And I even myself had to translate some people and tell them and help them with the paperwork. So we're going to have some individual cases that will be peculiar, but the bottom line is somebody have to test positive, and they have to be isolated for 5 days, and they have to prove it from their employer that they didn't get paid for those 5 days. But beyond 5 days, I wish we could help. And if the council wants to, I mean, I'm okay with that. But right now, this is to deal with the 5-day isolation period. I hope I answered some of these questions.
Well, I think my
That
question was, if we would do it for 5 days and do it twice, why don't we just do it for 10 days and say that's like your lifetime limit? You know, if you said we do it for 5 days now and in 6 months you can do it for 5 days again, why? Why not just say you can get up to 10 days pay? And if you just need, you know, you're isolating 5 now, then do that. But if you need 10 days off now for sick pay, do that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hopkins, because at the reality of the situation, somebody who has COVID, 5 days is not, they're going to have more than 5 days. A lot of cases that we've been seeing. So I think this is great. I think we still need some things still flushed out. I think we've kind of narrowed it down. So council, how do you, before I say that, Ms. Cowie, do we have any comments from the community?
Mr. Medford.
Okay, Mr. Medford.
Yes, so I definitely agree with the spirit of this idea. It definitely is a great way to encourage people to stay healthy and stay home. But as Susan and everybody else has already said, the devil is in the details. And actually what I was thinking about is I am self-employed. I don't have a W-2. I don't have a pay stub. I know several people in the city like myself who are also self-employed, contract workers, gig workers, stuff like that. So I would think that there needs to be some consideration for those people as well who don't work a traditional W-2 type situation. I'm going to channel my inner accountant here since our other council member has stepped off. And I wonder about the tax implications of some of these. I don't know if we're going to have to send out 1099s on some of these payments, especially if somebody gets the full, what possible $1,200 amount. I know some of my clients, when I go over a certain amount, they have to send me a 1099. So I don't know about that. And then there's lastly, to make things even more complicated, there's times where the person quarantining is not the actual person that's sick. Sometimes the person is being held away from their job because they have to quarantine for someone they care for. In the matter of a parent or somebody other type of caregiver. So in this case, the person who tests positive would be, say, the child, but of course the child can't stay home and quarantine. So the parent has to then lose out on work to quarantine with the child. So it's not cut and dried. And I think there might be some issues at that point. We've already got a child care crisis in our area anyway, just to have good quality childcare options. So just think about those other possibilities could go out there. I think there's a lot. While I understand Mr. Councilman Yasu's interest in getting this done quickly, I think there's a lot of moving pieces to go in place. And I frankly don't trust the best in people. And so my first thought was who's going to try to abuse this and how? And I'm not sure how you'd have to go in and vet the tax pay stubs to make sure the tax ID numbers are correct, things like that. Because if you give somebody an opportunity to get $600 for free, somebody will figure out a way to steal it. So that's just verification is gonna be the hard part. And I really, Shawana, I don't look forward to that, having to go through all these and try to find which one's the good ones and which one out of the 100 might be a bad one. I don't know. But it's not going to be an easy one. And it's going to be a lot of hour work and hand work by whoever's doing it. So, but yeah, it's a great idea. Lots of details. Thank you.
It was the same process that we had to go through for utility assistance, for rental assistance. It was a tedious process. Yes, it did take a lot of hours and a lot of going back and forth. Information was not valid information, correct, honest, consistent information. So just like I said before, we may not have to specifically look at COVID as the initiative itself. There are options to ARPA funding to provide to households. And if it is an issue to provide financial assistance to those households, then we can look at those options as well.
Okay. So that's good to know that at least we have two options from where Vice Mayor Yasu wants to do this explicitly this way, but also, as you're saying, there's another option for us to be able to allocate funding to our residents in this particular situation via ARPA funding. Oh, okay.
Correct.
And Mr. Medford, you have been temporarily assigned the role of being Councilman Hassan's OCPA duties. So I'm gonna make sure that you're on alert for that as well. So thanks for keeping up with this for us and bringing up those points about taxation and everything else, because those are things that we have to think about, how we deal with it. And we don't necessarily have that answer right now. Okay. And that's, Mr. Quinn, is that, from your understanding, is that something that we would have to be mindful of?
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question for me?
Well, Mr. Medford, Mr. Medford brought up a good point that, you know, we're giving people income. We're giving them this money as to offset
as far as the
income.
1099 question. Well, as the first thing I say whenever anyone asks me anything about taxes or something that the IRS deals with is that I'm not an accountant and I really don't know the answer. But sometimes I will speculate, and I believe or speculate that a government benefit such as this would not be considered income. But again, I would highly recommend asking a CPA or someone who knows the authoritative
experience. Okay, so I'll let your JD stay where it is. I won't bother you. Okay. All right, Vice Mayor Yasu.
I just have to weigh in on this. And I just want to let you know that, no, we don't need to give anybody 1099 on this, because if you recall, all the money we got from the federal government, it's not considered as an income. All the stimulus money we got, even all the rental assistance, is not considered as an income. We never sent a single person or utility assistance. All that ARPA money was given.
But that's different, because the ARPA, what we did for the utilities, for everything else was supplemental, but this is very specific to their income. We're giving this to them for their income. So I don't know if we've addressed that in terms of what are any of the implications with that, because I think those are some things that we might need to think about, not just whether it's a 1099, but what does that do for them, or what changes does that have for them as well? That's something that we hadn't really talked about, discussed, or thought about, because that changes. If there's somebody who's making $2 something, and now we've increased it to $15 an hour, right? So we've changed the amounts that they're receiving. So those are some of those other little, like Councilwoman Hood said, the devil's in the details. So I think it's a great idea. I'm not against it. I'm for it. I'm totally for it. But I think, Council, how do you want to proceed with it? Yes, Vice Mayor Yasu.
Well, I think I know that there are questions being asked. How about this? How about that? But I'm really thinking this is really straightforward. I think we're making it complicated more than it deserves. I really don't see any complications on this. If we had any other programs, like the city manager said, there's this process already we have that we use to help people with utility assistance, with rental assistance. We have checked their income in so many other programs that we have. So I don't see the difference between that and this. And this is the same. This is just an extension of that. What we are doing is we're supplementing. We are, instead of people endangering their coworkers, we try and see, and also instead of people worrying about their income, we are relieving that concern from them. Simple as that. And all they have to do is this, they have to prove it. And I'm pretty sure the city manager have dealt with similar things, like she said, with the other programs, and I don't see the difference between it. So I really think we should go ahead and vote on this for next Tuesday council meeting.
And I guess my only concern is, in light of, for example, Ms. Calwee saying that we do have two options. We really haven't discussed both of the options that we have, or which one makes sense for us to do. Because, and is that correct, Ms. Calwee, that you were saying that we could do another program where we're assisting them?
That is correct.
So
any assistance that's related to COVID-19 in the pandemic can receive assistance. And that assistance not only goes to businesses, but to households as well.
all right, Council, how do you want to proceed?
I would like to hear more about the options of just helping households, because that might be all inclusive, but what are the rules on that? I mean, I think Councilman Iyasu was trying to limit it to a very specific circumstance and situation of like helping people. And then, as I think all of us pointed out, but what about this group? But what about that group? What about the people who are really sick? What about the gig workers? What about, but it sounds like your other options may be more comprehensive or all inclusive.
Yeah, because assistance, and I'm just going to give a general assistance based on the ARPA funds is related to anyone that has been, anyone or any entity, which is a business that has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In any way that you've been affected, just like Vice Mayor Iyasu has specifically said, see, he's getting specific on the matter that he wants to provide that assistance to a household. If you have had COVID within this certain period of time and you have not worked within this certain period of time, you can get assistance up to this amount, or this annually, or per household, or per person, based on these hours in this amount. Of course, ARPA funds actually outline what you can receive, again, as assistance. We can provide loans to households at a specific amount that has dealt with the pandemic in whatever shape or form, a family loss or loss of wages. Again, it goes specifically to what council has addressed as an issue for their community. Again, as I said before, we need to get together and make sure that we're not spotting our allocation for these ARPA funds, and you're actually getting together and creating these initiatives that can assist on a long-term basis. Not saying that Council Vice Mayor Iyasu's project is not long-term, but it is providing immediate assistance for our residents who may be in need now because of their employment situation. But what I'm saying is that when we come together and allocate those specific projects with that amount, with the specific details on how we're going to allocate that fund, it will not have us in this limbo of everything that we're providing based on these funds will have an allocation or a matter that has dealt with COVID-19 and the pandemic. So that's where we are specifically. He's just getting down to that last little piece of thread saying, I'm going to specifically say this is COVID-19 related based on, you know, a household being tested or a person being tested for COVID.
Councilwoman Bell?
So this is just a suggestion. The only thing I'm asking, and Vice Mayor Yasu, you can, you know, decline, that's fine. But I was wondering if you would be willing to refer it to a committee where we can compile all this information as well as the options, which would give us time, right? Because we would also have had the retreat by the end for you to have a package that we can all agree on. Because I do think it's good intent. I just think some of the logistical details of execution and like our target population and just like, you know, timeline, stuff like that. But it's up to you totally because this is your measure, but that's my suggestion.
Anybody else? Okay. Vice Mayor Yasu.
I haven't heard from Councilmember Carroll, and he was my co-sponsor. I just wanted to let him say it.
Put him out there. Put him out there.
Obviously, I do support it because I was the co-sponsor. I mean, so I, you know, if you want to move forward, I'm okay with moving forward. I just think we need to, you know, if we want to move forward, I think we need to hurry and nail down all the details next week. Just I wouldn't want to move forward without knowing all this stuff. So it's kind of up to, you know, Vice Mayor, so if he wants to move forward, or if he wants to try to have a committee meeting first.
That sounds good to me. So council, it sounds like you're looking to defer to a committee for further. I'm seeing shaking nods, no.
I'm not sure a committee's the answer. I mean, I'm still unclear on what the options are. If we, you know, if it's a multiple choice question, I'm very clear on Councilman Iyasu's proposal. What I'm not clear on is the alternative. And is it possible, because it sounds like what we're talking, I don't know what Ms. Kui, you need as city manager for us to set rules on that fund. Do you want us to do like line item if they have, you know, tested positive but are asymptomatic and just need to quarantine, that's X dollars, and if they have a kid who's sick, they got to take a week off work, it's, you know, Y number of dollars? Do you need us to specify each possible circumstance that money could be allocated for? Is that what you're looking for from, I guess that's the question, what are you looking for from us on that funding that we would be discussing in the retreat? Or
you mean overall? You're talking about the ARPA funding in general.
Right, and how we can help
Correct.
households. Do you need us to specify every which way we could help a household?
If it's a project, if it's a initiative, if it's a downtown facade program, as Councilwoman Bell has stated before, is it another, you know, is it just a loan program to a small business? Is it household financial assistance? Is it a weatherization program, as Councilwoman Johnson has stated?
Okay.
Those each individual initiatives, we do need to get down to the specifics on the amount and what will be the criteria for having each one of those initiatives.
So
that
we
will
could,
assist us from
so I think what you're saying, we could move forward on this, but then at the same time, we need to like coordinate and organize all the different things we have together and allocate all of the money as well.
that could be.
Okay.
And that's what retreats are for.
That's why we said it.
Okay.
That's why we were saying, let's look at the money at the retreat. And we had that discussion about that. Vice Mayor Yasu.
This is going to be the last one. And I honestly not sure what the discussion about the alternative is. If there's an alternative, it should have been brought to the council. I brought this agenda item, so I really am not sure why we're talking about other alternatives. If there are other alternatives, bring them to the agenda and let's talk about them and let's see if we're there. But to deflect this agenda item by saying we have other alternatives is not really, I don't really see that viable. But if you want me to write all these details, I would be willing to write the resolution myself, and I will forward it to our city attorney, and I'll make sure that happens before our next council meeting. But I feel this is ready to be voted on this on next Tuesday, and I definitely would love to see it getting on the agenda for next council meeting. And I think this is really straightforward. And if we want to expand it in the future, we can definitely expand it. We can add more things to it. But for now, let's focus only the small thing on whatever that this could address, and let's deal with those. And in the future, if we want to help the gig workers, we can expand it. If we want to help if we want to see other also loan programs, we could create those. But for now, I don't see why we have to wait for retreat and all that. But this is just straightforward. And all these questions that you brought, I've been taking notes. I will respond to them. I will put them in a resolution, and I will forward that to the entire council. And I'll make sure that happens before our next council meeting. If that's fair enough, then we can vote on this agenda item on next Tuesday meeting.
That's fair enough for me.
That's fair, but I've heard alternatives. And Councilwoman Johnson, you have anything to say about this one?
I don't want to argue about it. I'm good.
It's nothing to argue about.
There's 100 questions that haven't been answered, and he's going to answer them in 7 days. So I'm going to wait on I didn't want you to do it this way, Vice Mayor, because if we can't talk about it, get all of these questions answered, you may not get the support you need when we vote. So that's the only reason we wanted to make sure that all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed, so we would have a straightforward vote. Because right now, everybody's in limbo because there's so many unanswered questions. I am totally for the idea, but I have questions of my own. So yeah, I don't know.
Councilwoman Hood.
Yes, I think that we do need a comprehensive approach relative to the funding. And what Councilmember Vice Mayor Yasu is doing is a focused approach to limiting the contagion of COVID by helping people make the right decision to stay home. So he's trying to deal with that particular issue in this particular approach. So it is very complicated. I would be willing to give a week for him to address all of these issues that we've brought forward and see if we can feel comfortable that, number one, this is something we want to do because it helps people financially. And as I said, it helps them make the right decision relative to their illness. Because I think people probably do go to work sick and spread COVID. And if for some reason we still have more questions next week, then perhaps we take it up at the retreat and then try to nail down. But he's not proposing a comprehensive approach. He has picked an issue that is important so that people can make the good decision. But it is, in my way of looking, more difficult than somebody just showing us their utility bill and saying, I need help with it, because there are many other factors to it that we have to decide. So I'm okay having it on the agenda. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hey, Councilwoman Bell.
I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say anything else, I promise. My other concern, Councilmember Vice Mayor Yasu, is this is a staff capacity situation as well. If we don't understand it here, How are we expecting our staff to be able to explain it to residents that are going to come in to receive the services? And I got all faith in you. If you say you need 7 days, and in 7 days you're going to have all the questions answered, then so be it. We can discuss it then. I just want to be realistic around just like scenario planning. If this happens, A, B, and C, how are we addressing it, and so that it's comprehensive for all of us to know. And I think, quite frankly, your intent is great. It's just the execution of this and what that looks like for our residents in our city, and like who are the people that we're going to be leaving out, or just some details. But I hope this coming from a good place from all of us. And I'm just speaking for myself when I say that. Like I'm not trying to halt anything. I think it's great. I just think that the rollout, the execution is where I still have some concerns and questions.
Thank you. And Councilman Carroll, I see you.
No, I mean, I think, I don't really have that much to add. I want to see what Vice Mayor Arstu comes up with, but I do support the general concept, and I'm hopeful. I agree it's a time-sensitive manner issue, so I'm hopeful we can just get it done on Tuesday. But if we can't,
All right.
go back.
Okay, it sounds like a plan. And Vice Mayor, it sounds like you don't have any time this weekend because you're going to be busy putting this together. So we appreciate that. And with that being said, we're going to put him to the task, put it on the agenda, see where we come out with it, and go from there. How about that? Okay? All right. That sounds like a plan. With that being said, we're going to the residents. The next item, we've closed all of the new business. We move on to item 7, which is the executive session. As you know, we will close out our recess from the work session and go into another meeting for executive session. Now, if you are just someone who is so curious to see how long we're going to be there, then you can just wait. But for those so you understand, we're going to come back from executive session and adjourn the meeting. So it's up to you if you want to, but I just want to make sure people understand what the process is going forward. So Vice Mayor Yasu.
I got a quick question, and then I will definitely make the motion. Are we going to be on Zoom or the telephone line?
I sent a separate.
We got both. We got a Zoom.
The city clerk has sent the teleconference sign-in information to each one of you.
Well,
Is that correct?
I did it. Yes, she did, but I sent a Zoom because I didn't see that at first. I sent another Zoom.
But so you can go to the teleconference.
So I guess the question. Okay, so before we do that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Before you do that, I want to make sure, do you want to do it via teleconference or do you want to do it Zoom?
I think teleconference works.
Okay, so we'll do a teleconference, everybody. Okay, so now Vice Mayor Yasu, go for it.
I move that we go to an executive session to discuss personnel matter.
And I second.
It's been properly moved and second that we recess this meeting and go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passed, and so we will close out on this.
Just left the room.
So one of our quorum we still have quorum. Okay.
Okay.
I'll take a motion to move to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye.
Adjourn. Boom.